Good evening, everyone. I am Amanda Benjamin.
I'm Paul Carganilla, and we welcome you to our mystifying show in which we explore mysteries of the unknown.
In this live stream and podcast, we'll tell tales of the paranormal and unsolved, while mixing in a little fun and live music as well.
And tonight, in our third episode, we will explore the puzzling and cryptic topic of true crime.
Welcome to the Magical Mystery Hour.
If you're listening to the audio podcast of this episode, we invite you to find this show on our YouTube channel, the Vaudacity Network, where you can view any images or videos we share throughout these stories.
And see our faces as well. If you already subscribe to the Vaudacity Network on YouTube, but it's a challenge to find the time to sit down and watch each episode, this live stream will be released as an audio podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the Magical Mystery Hour wherever you consume podcasts.
And speaking of the YouTube live stream, let's check in with our friends over in the chat. There's so many, and they were so patient.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Good to see you, Christina, Steve, Emily, Diana, David, Susan, Dari. Who am I missing here? Did I say Emily? Corey, Dave, David, and Dave. Craig Jackman's here in the chat, too. Producer Craig. Susan, hello. So good to see you. We are sharing new things. We're sharing lots of images and new stuff. We kind of had to figure out how to get it all set before we started rolling this evening.
Yes, sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. You are a whiz and you made it happen. Amanda Benjamin on the ones and twos. So I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And are you ready, tucked in and ready to hear about some true crime stories?
Oh, true crime.
Amanda, how was your Thanksgiving? Was it good?
It was so nice. It was good. I was working on this story a bit yesterday, but also we, made our turkey, which we made a much larger turkey this year because that was what was at the store, and realized that's kind of awesome. Now we have, I love turkey. I have like a turkey sandwich almost every day, so I'm just excited that now I'm like, oh, I get fresh turkey and love leftovers.
Yes. We postponed because of the sickness in our home.
No.
So we're going to do Thanksgiving tomorrow. So I'm super excited. We get to, we were on the couch. We had macaroni for dinner yesterday. But,
Macaroni. It's, easy to swallow. It's soft. It's, that's good for when you're sick.
During the picnic when did we do the picnic? Wednesday. We were chatting in the chat. We were talking about ordering pizzas and getting tacos.
Yes.
And then I ended up, having some macaroni, and it was great. It was all we needed. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and it's salty too, so it's good to help with your fluids. It's actually sounds really good.
Well, we have a couple of epic tales tonight. Now, when we started talking about doing true crime, Amanda wanted to do unsolved one.
Gotta be unsolved.
I'm a huge fan of true crime, and most of the time, you find out the ending, and there's closure at the end. As sad as it may be, but Amanda was like, we do mystery stories. We have to pick unsolved ones.
Yes. At least this time around.
So at first I had a hard time thinking of which ones I might consider, but then I had a list as long as
I know. It's once you delve into it, there's a lot of material out there.
Yeah. So as with each of these episodes, Amanda's going to tell her story first.
Ooh, all right. Well, I decided to go with a story. It is fascinating. It spans 40 years, well, just about 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's still unsolved. But like I said, it's fascinating, and it goes, anywhere from kind of a I don't want to say low level because I don't think any of these crimes are low level, but a relatively lower level crime to something that goes all the way to the top. And any of them in the end seem plausible. And so I just was fascinating looking at this. And not only that, I found out as I was researching this that they actually just came out with a documentary on Netflix about this. So you can go, that's where actually I got a large chunk of information from there because they have full interviews with a lot of the people involved. So I was taking notes on what they said. I watched a bunch of other videos. I read a few actually old like New York Times articles about it from back from the 80s when it happened. A few more from the 90s and 2000s. It's a very, very fascinating topic. I was like, wow. My original notes when I was taking, because I take notes, I try to take notes into like an actual notebook because I have a lot of them. It's like my first notes are by hand, and it ended up being 40 pages of notes.
Wow.
I know. It's like, oh.
Well, we'll dive into it, but right before we do, we'll just say a couple of disclaimers.
Yes.
First and foremost, don't take anything we say here to court with you. We're internet research sleuths. We're getting our information from the dark web. We were there firsthand for any of these events. These are not eyewitness accounts, so don't hold us accountable.
No.
And I don't know about yours, but mine does have some pretty gruesome imagery as far as like descriptions, like your Dietlov Pass episode. We're going to describe some injuries. We're not going to show anything gross, but
no gross pictures.
Just a couple quick disclaimers.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it is, Google searches, this person has said this came out, this this is a secondhand. So yeah, definitely I know like we've done the very best we can to get you as much accurate information as possible, but do forgive us if we get a date wrong here or there again, because especially with mine takes place in Italy, so there's a lot that goes through translations as well as secondhand accounts.
It is also important to mention, as David says in the live chat on YouTube, it's also important to mention that these are unsolved mysteries and the families are still dealing with it. So we're going to be very sensitive to that.
Yes.
And also I was going to say something and I forgot what that was.
Oh, no.
So I'll just edit that out.
Yeah, especially that is especially important to my story because the family of the victim is actively every day following up on leads and making phone calls and visiting here and there. It is their lives. The mother in the story is now in her 90s and desperately searching for answers at the end of her life. So like all respect and love to the families of this.
Absolutely. All right.
So, okay.
That said, let's dig in.
Ooh. Okay. I'm going to put some little background music on. Go ahead and you guys, I believe I have it set low enough, but let me know if it's too loud. Okay. My story tonight is about the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi. June 22nd, 1983. Was a suffocatingly hot and humid day in Rome, Italy. Inside a humble flat in the tiny city-state of Vatican City, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi was getting ready for her music lesson at the Tommaso da Vittoria School just outside Vatican City in Rome. And just so you can see, this is Emanuela Orlandi. Her small room was full of the trappings of a 1980s teenager, including posters and drawings of her favorite pop stars. She was gathering her things, her book bag, her sheet music, folders, registration card, her flute, everything as she prepared for her short trip to school. It was summer, and it was very hot, but she was continuing her lessons and preparing for a concert, so she had to make it to her lesson. This is her family. Her mother, Maria, was in the kitchen at the time preparing a pizza for dinner. Her oldest sister, Natalina, was out with friends, while another sister, Federica, was studying in her room. Her youngest sister, Maria Cristina, was in the house, staying cool. And Emanuela's father, Hercule, was still at work as an envoy, which is kind of like an office clerk of the prefecture of the Pontifical House. So, come back. Considering the wretched weather, Emanuela approached her brother Pietro and asked him for a ride. He refused, saying that he had already made a commitment to his girlfriend, and he felt guilty as he had often changed his plans with his girlfriend in order to drive Emanuela places. So he decided that this day he would prioritize his girlfriend. He regrets this decision to this very day. Emanuela would have to make the journey to her flute lesson, as she did 3 days a week, on the crowded number 64 public bus. The usually happy air of the house was disrupted by an argument between the two, and Emanuela yelled at Pietro and slammed the door behind her. Sadly, this would be the last conversation and glimpse Pietro would ever have of Emanuela. Now, she arrived about 10 minutes late to her flute lesson, and her teacher noted that she appeared distracted throughout the entire lesson. Finally, she asked if she could be released early that day. Immediately after class, Emanuela called home. Federica answered the phone and was surprised to hear Emanuela's voice. Emanuela explained that she had been late to her lesson because she had been approached by a man who offered her a job passing out flyers and selling Avon products at a 2-hour fashion show that weekend. Federica was surprised by the large amount of money that they offered her for the work. So she told Emanuela that her parents weren't available at the moment and that she should really talk to them before committing to any work. Emanuela agreed and said that she would meet Natalina and some friends at the bridge nearby at 7:30 p.m. Natalina arrived at their meeting spot, and Emanuela wasn't there. She waited 5, 10, 15 minutes, and when Emanuela didn't arrive, Natalina returned home to see if she had changed her plans. Her parents said she hadn't come home, but they were sure that she would be there any minute. As the hours passed, the family became more and more frantic that their daughter had not returned. In Vatican City, the gates close at midnight. So these are some of the gates there. This is the main entrance into Vatican City. So you see there's tall gates. The entire city is walled in. So once the gates close, there's no way to get back in.
That's a hard curfew.
Yeah, you have until midnight.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So, what if Emanuela was locked outside? What if she was hurt? What if she was scared? So, Natalina began calling all the hospitals in the area, reaching out to anybody she could think of. And at 9:30, the family decided to take action. Her father, Hercule, attempted to make a missing persons report, but the police said that it was too early. There had been dozens of teenagers reported missing recently, all of whom returned on their own shortly after being reported missing. So this may have biased the police and kept the investigation from starting immediately. The family said that this was very out of character for Emanuela. She would never break a commitment to meet her sister, and she would absolutely not disappear before a recital. The family begged the police to search for her, but there was just no changing their minds. Meanwhile, her brother Pietro and one of their cousins rode all over Rome just looking for Emanuela. They stopped everyone that they could find. They showed them pictures. They were searching for any kind of leads they could find, but just weren't getting anywhere. They had no luck. She seemed to have vanished without a trace. Amid their search, the gates to the city closed for the night, and there was still no sign of Emanuela. The next day, Natalina went to the police again to file the missing persons report, and she brought a picture of Emanuela. In a failed attempt of comfort, an officer said, "Don't worry, she isn't pretty enough to be kidnapped." Despite this, yes.
Wait, what?
Yep. They thought, right? Only these beautiful girls, they get kidnapped, taken away. Don't worry, it's not her. Let's look at this picture again.
I was going to say, well, first of all, there's no pretty scale.
Exactly.
There's
like,
none.
What are you thinking?
She's adorable.
I know.
But still, there's no scale. But also, like, I totally understand. Like, I get the whole. As soon as we take the time to file a missing persons report.
Yeah.
Kids usually come back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I totally get that. But like in a situation where the gates to the city close, like you can't say that.
I know it's terrible.
You can't say she's not pretty. Oh my god.
I know. Yeah, they said they thought as far as she said in the interviews, she felt like they were trying to comfort her, being like, "There's no way that she's kidnapped," you know. But wow. Wow. Yeah. So, despite this conversation, it did take some time, but Emanuela was declared a missing person. And in the meantime, the family ran an ad with Emanuela's information in the local newspapers and asked for any information that anybody had. And they even left their phone number for people to call the house directly. That way they wouldn't have to wait to actually get through to the police station. Well, that is a great idea. This set off a series of events that would clarify and convolute the case. They were inundated with calls. Some were cryptic messages, some were clearly prank calls, but one call just immediately stood out from the rest. On June 25th, 3 days after Emanuela disappeared, Emanuela's father answered the phone, and someone claiming to be Pierluigi said that he and his girlfriend saw a girl matching Emanuela's description in the Campo de Fiori. Okay. Now, this was an area very close to Emanuela's school, and this location really grabbed Ercol's attention. Pierluigi said the girl was going by the name Barbara and that she was selling Avon cosmetics. Now, considering the offer that the man had approached her at school with, they found this to be highly credible. Right? Makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Then, after this call on June 26th, the Italian Secret Service sent a few agents. One was named Mario Vulpiani, and the other one was Giulio Gangi. And they came to the Orlandi house just before midnight. Now, Gangi, unknown to the family at the time, had actually met Emanuela before, and he became really attached to this case because he knew her. Not that well, but still, there's just something that makes it personal when you've met somebody. So they searched a room, they took notes, and they decided to install a recording device on the family's phone. Just in case any other phone calls came through, they would have a record of it. So the next day, Gangi can't stop thinking about the case. So he decided to canvass nearby garages because they had a lead from both a policeman and kind of like a traffic warden. And they both said that they saw Emanuela talking to a man in a green BMW outside her school near the Senate building. Okay, and they even made sketches of this. They did like a police artist sketch a little bit later. But they couldn't confirm this information because the cameras that are usually in front of the Senate building were not working that day.
Every time.
But there were the two reports of this happening, so the investigator was pretty convinced that this was real, and he thought that the vehicle was important. So, after searching several garages, one mechanic said that he had just fixed a green BMW whose passenger window had been broken from the inside. So he thought, could Emanuela have broken the window in a struggle? Determined to find out more, he found where the car was registered and headed straight to that address. Unfortunately, he was met by a belligerent woman who screamed at him and chased him off the property. So he went back, he wrote his report about what had happened, and he was instructed by his boss to never return to that residence. And very soon after that, he was completely removed from the case and moved to a desk job with no satisfactory explanation. Right?
This is crazy. Like, that happens in my story, too. It's the craziest thing.
I don't understand.
You care too much.
I know.
Go do something else.
Yeah, what? So, June 28th, 5 days after the disappearance, the family received another mysterious phone call. This time it was from somebody named Mario. And he had a very similar story to Pierluigi. He claimed that a girl matching Emanuela's description had been seen selling clothes and cosmetics with another woman. He said her name was Barbara, or maybe Barbarella. Perhaps Barbarella. Okay. Then he mentioned something that really caught their attention. The girl had a flute. Not only that, but Barbara would not play the flute because she had to wear thick glasses to read her music, and she was too embarrassed to be seen with them. The family says that the details about the flute and glasses had not been made public at this time. So they became more and more convinced that this was Emanuela. Mario continued his story, saying that she told him the only real regret she had was that she was not able to sing at her school recital, and that she was supposed to play the flute at her sister's wedding in the fall. And both of those details were only known to close family. She usually played flute or played piano, but this time she was singing. And her sister's wedding, again, that had been very new, and pretty much nobody but them knew about it. And at this point, Mario says that Barbara had run away from home because she needed space. But she had been planning on returning back home in time for the wedding. The family was really sad about this, but also felt a little bit of relief that it appeared that she might still be alive and well. Now, by June 29th, Rome was covered in posters of Emanuela. These were large posters, and they were just in long rows all over buildings, poster after poster after poster. Each one had her picture on it, and in large letters the word scomparsa, which means missing. All of Rome would know about Emanuela after this day. So then, another bit of the story happens. July 3rd, Pope John Paul II. He's leading his weekly Sunday prayer in St. Peter's Square. In his speech, he announced that Emanuela had disappeared and, in an action both hailed and ridiculed over the years, said, "I am close to the Orlandi family." Now, on one hand, this is very comforting and supportive. It's a really nice gesture from the Pope to his citizens and to a family in crisis, because they lived in Vatican City, and so the Pope is the head, right? He is the ultimate power in the city, okay? Because it's a city-state, so it's like its own country. He's at the very top. So, he could have just been trying to be comforting. But this kind of tipped the hat a little bit, because it showed that he had some kind of like a pull in this, that he felt something strong. Okay, so this could bring a lot of people, right, to start to take advantage of it. So it, in one case, was very nice, but in another way, it really opened the door.
Yeah, made it public.
Yeah, right?
The microphone.
And on a world stage.
Right.
Yeah. So just 2 days after this, the Orlandi family received probably the most important phone call of all. It was a man with a strong American accent, and henceforth we'll call him the American. He claimed that he was part of a Turkish organization called the Grey Wolves, and that Pierluigi and Mario were actually two of his men. The American says that they will free Emanuela if they release Mehmet Ali Agca from his life sentence in Italian prison. And they set a deadline of July 20th, 1983. But you might be asking yourself, who is Mehmet Ali Agca? So this is his picture. We're going to have to go back a couple years. May 13th, 1981, Pope John Paul II was entering St. Peter's Square, which was just filled to the brim with people. Mehmet Ali Agca attempted to assassinate the Pope. He shot him twice, once in the hand and once in the chest. John Paul II suffered severe blood loss from the wounds and was rushed to the hospital. As he entered, a nurse recalled him saying, "How could they do this?" Back at St. Peter's, Agca fled the scene in the chaos that ensued, and he nearly made it out of Vatican City. But just as he was nearing the edge of the city, he was tackled by a nun and subsequently arrested. Right?
Yes, sister.
Sister. She was like, no.
So what, do they have him in like Vatican City jail? Is
Yeah,
it, like,
he's in
Disney
Italian
jail?
prison. I think he's in an Italian prison, but yeah.
Okay.
But he has a life sentence.
Right.
And so that's what this caller said that they wanted, was an exchange.
Okay.
So back to the phone call. Okay. Now we're July 5th, right, 1983. The American said that somebody would be in touch with the Orlandi family about the next steps, and they would call very soon. And they kind of said that they didn't really feel anger toward the American at this point. They actually felt, again, relief, thinking, okay, now we know more. She's still alive. And her father asked them to just be kind to her. That same evening, the Vatican received their own phone call from the American, and he offered them the same deal. So he's making 2 phone calls.
Yeah, playing both sides.
Yeah. And as a side note, in response to the news of this call, Mehmet Ali Aja actually said that he didn't want to be released from Italian prison and that he didn't know who this caller was or anything about the Grey Wolves. But
He's like, do not give me over to them.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. I'm having a great time here in Vatican jail. Like, the food's really good. I get good sleep.
Yeah, he had no idea. But his story did change several times over the years. This made him an unreliable witness. For example, in 2006, he released a letter saying that Emanuela and a second girl were taken to a royal palace in Liechtenstein. And in 2011, he claimed that the Vatican set up the whole assassination attempt and that Emanuela was a prisoner of the Vatican before being sent to a European country to live as a nun. He added to that story that the Orlandi family could go see her anytime they wanted. She just wasn't allowed to leave. So, confusing. Not the best witness.
Yeah, it's very convoluted already.
I know. So the Orlandi family received many, many more calls from the American over the next several months. One time he played a tape of a girl stating her name, her age, her school, and they said they recognized her voice immediately as Emanuela, but that they really wanted proof that she was alive. So the American decided to send a package.
You never pay for a proof of life.
Exactly. Right?
Sorry. Quote from a movie.
So he sent a package, and he said it would be the proof that they were looking for. Inside it, the family found photocopies of Emanuela's school registration card, photocopies of her sheet music that she had been working on, a photocopy of a line that she wrote. It said, "Con tanto affetto, por vostra Emanuela," which translates to, "With much affection, your Emanuela." Now, this all seems convincing at first glance, but then you have to consider that these are photocopies. This really only means that whoever sent it has Emanuela's documents, right? Some personal effects, but photocopies aren't actual proof that she is still alive. Also, a handwriting expert looked at her writing and said that her writing didn't appear to be distressed or overly emotional in any way, as you would expect somebody to be, right? If you're kidnapped and they say, write this out, write it out. There was nothing. It didn't seem, under duress. So it's very possible that they intercepted these things, a letter from the mail, or if they had her backpack, she could have written a note to somebody. Who knows? So we still have no proof that she's alive. And we're going to move on to July 18th now. It's been almost a month after she disappeared. And an anonymous call was placed to the main Italian news agency called ANSA. They said that there would be another package at the Via della Dattaria. And when a journalist went to retrieve it, they found an audio cassette tape. Upon listening to it, on one side was the American saying the same thing, "I want to trade for Aja," same deal. On the other side of the cassette tape, they heard a woman just crying out in agony. And they said it had to be somebody being tortured. They handed it over to the police, and after some investigation, they concluded that the audio was actually lifted from an adult film. So, yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yep. So, still no proof that Emanuela was alive. And it just felt like they were back at square one.
How did they match that to an adult film?
I have no idea.
Like, somebody listening to the tape just goes, I know that scene.
And they're like, oh, wait, no.
I mean...
No, I just have a feeling. Yeah.
A friend of mine told me this scene might... I don't know.
Yeah. Yikes. Yeah, I don't know. You know, why not, like, pull it from a horror movie, right? Like, I don't know. It's just like, there's so much material out there. I don't know. But, so after this, the American made a huge request, okay, that he claimed would be a major step towards releasing Emanuela. He asked for a direct line to the Vatican. Surprisingly, the Vatican agrees to this request. There were phone calls and lengthy conversations with the American, but the Vatican, to this day, has refused to release the details of the call. Nobody knows what was said. The world may never know exactly what information the Vatican may have collected during these calls. And it's important to remember that while the Italian police were doing most of the investigating, since the actual abduction happened in Rome, Vatican City is a sovereign nation over which Italy has no actual authority. So if the Vatican decides not to share something, there's not anything anybody can really do about it.
Yeah. It's like Disney.
Yeah, just run everything, right? Disney. So, meanwhile, the police tried to track the calls from the American, but they only made minimal progress. They discovered that all 16 calls that they had been tracking were made from public telephones. After careful analysis of the audio, they found that in the background noise of the calls, the whistle of a train station was audible. The police came up with a brilliant plan to catch the American. They closed many of the public phones around train stations. They said they were down for repairs, and they did this throughout the whole city, so that leaves them with only a select and controlled number of phones to monitor. When a call from the American came in next, they tried to keep the caller on the phone long enough for the team to trace the call. The moment that they determined that the call originated from a bar, the closest agent sped over. But by the time he got there, the caller was gone. So finally, July 20th arrives, the deadline. A monastery received a call that seemed to have nothing to do with anything. They got a call, and they said that there were only hours left to save Emanuela. However, the police didn't move forward with releasing Aja because there was still no proof that Emanuela was actually alive. So police, investigators, journalists, they all said they were sure that there would be more demands. Because in a kidnapping, the first deadline is rarely the last. So,
sure.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that often happens. It's very common.
Stretch it out.
Yeah. And then we're going to move forward. We didn't hear anything for almost a month. But on August 13th, the Italian news agency, again, ANSA, receives another call, from the Turkish Grey Wolves, demanding that the Pope publicly declare Mehmet Ali Aja is a human being, just like Emanuela Orlandi. Kind of an odd request. But the very same day, at his noonday prayer at his summer residence, Pope John Paul II said, "I feel very close to the parents of these young students, sharing their unspeakable anxiety. I pray that the Lord will touch the hearts of those who say they are holding these innocent and defenseless beings. As always, I pray for the person of my would-be assassin." So, something,
the person of my would-be assassin.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
Okay.
So he is, I mean,
like
again, that's
loosely
kind of a
translated.
translation. Yeah. Like, it's kind of, yeah, basically saying, just really saying, like, emphasizing the person, like,
Got it.
because, they probably, a lot of people will see him as not a person, but he's saying like, right, he is still a person.
He kind of said it without saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the same day. Like, so something that's interesting about this, shortly after making his recovery, the Pope actually went to visit Mehmet Ali Acha, you can see, and he made a statement pronouncing his forgiveness of him and even called him his brother. So why would it be so important to the Grey Wolves for him to be called a person if he's already publicly forgiven him?
Right.
Yeah. Personally, I think the request was from the Grey Wolves was a test, right? Just to see how invested he is. If he thought there was this little glimmer of hope, he would do it.
What can we get?
Yeah. Right? So it's like
They're
testing the waters. Yeah.
Like kids.
Yeah.
Dad, can I have fruit snacks?
Mhm.
Sure. Can I have Snickers? No.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, basically, I think they were just testing. Yeah. And just kind of as a side note, in that speech, he did say the parents of these young students, plural. And I am going to get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
But yes, that is another thing. So acquiescing to this request opened a whole other can of worms. And this one action possibly doomed any hope of solving the case. Because after seeing the Pope respond to this request, many other organizations began to claim that they had Emanuela and they sent their own list of demands. And due to the late timing, lack of new information from these organizations, they were mostly discredited. But still, it throws off the case. It takes time away from focusing on what they had before.
Sure.
Now, the Americans' last call was on October 27, 1983. This is just over 4 months after her disappearance. And after this call, just suddenly all forward momentum on this case stopped. Then on Christmas Eve, 1983, Pope John Paul II visits the Orlandi home. Despite living in the Vatican and working for several popes, the Orlandis had never had such a meeting, and they went into it with a mixture of excitement and grief. What would the Pope say about Emanuela? Was he going to do anything more than he'd already done? Emanuela's brother Pietro, that you see in the picture, said that during the visit, the Pope stated that Emanuela's kidnapping involved international terrorism.
How does he know that?
Exactly. Now, international terrorism would, if they're going along with the idea that, the Aja trade,
right.
Because that's from, the Turkish Grey Wolves. So you could make that leap. But that was exactly their question. Does he know more?
Italy versus the Vatican. That's international.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So that was their question. Does he know more than we know? What's going on? And in that same meeting, the Pope offered Pietro a job at the Vatican Bank. He didn't really have any relevant experience, and so he was surprised by the offer, but enthusiastically accepted. And he ended up staying in this job for many, many years. And again, with no more progress in the investigation, Italian prosecutors actually closed their investigations, and they wrote a report rejecting most of the conspiracy theories surrounding the case. So again, it kind of just was fizzling. Meanwhile, journalist Andrea Purgatori met with a source inside the Vatican that he knew. He recalled that his source would only conduct the interview on foot. They had to be actively walking around Rome, which made taking notes very difficult. So Purgatori actually had to memorize a lot of the details because it was just difficult to write. Was this because the source wanted to remain inconspicuous? The biggest bombshell that this source said was that there was no international terrorism plot in Emanuel's kidnapping. But that was all that he really gave him. So, exactly. If it's not international terrorism, then what is it? So Purgatori wrote the article just kind of based on the claims of his source, and he even mentioned that it's, could be it could be mob related, it could be this, it could be that, it could be political, it could be all of these things, but his source is saying it is not international terrorism. After writing this, Purgatori was dismissed from writing about the case permanently. Just like that Secret Service agent who was also dismissed suddenly with no explanation.
Did he have an explanation?
Nope. They just said, you were done writing about this case. You don't need to write about it anymore. It could be because they thought it was fizzling. Don't spend your time on it. We want you to do this. But there was nothing solid. And of course, he feels like it's just kind of a pushback from writing this. Something that he shouldn't have. So, and then you have to ask yourself, like, was there a connection between the agent who was, put on a desk job to the journalist who was taken off the case? Could there have been a common source? I don't know.
As the kids say, that's sus.
It really is. Really. So, as 1984 arrived, the case once again just stopped moving forward. But the Orlandi family never gave up hope that they would find Emanuela. Then, we're going to jump forward 10 years to, a little under 10 years, to 1993. The Orlandi family received an extraordinary call, and they were summoned to the magistrate's office where they were shown a picture of a young woman. The office asked if they thought this could be Emanuela. Now, it was difficult to draw a conclusion because the picture was kind of blurry, it was black and white, but she did share a lot of very similar features to Emanuela. So the magistrate's office said that it was a photo of a young woman at a convent in Luxembourg. Maria, Ercole, and Pietro made the journey to go meet her and find out if she could be Emanuela. So July 22nd, 1993, 10 years after her disappearance, they met the young woman. Maria entered the room alone to talk to her. When she exited the room, Pietro recalled the devastated look on his mother's face, and even the young woman's face. They were both crying, and he knew in an instant that that wasn't his sister. In 2004, Emanuela's father died. He was always faithful. He always thought that they would find her. But some of his final words were, "I was betrayed by those I served." I know.
Like the Pope.
Yep.
Pope, you're those.
Yeah. That's for sure what it seemed like. Pope, possibly just higher ups in the Vatican, but obviously he felt that something had happened. Now, Pope John Paul II died just about a year after that. And many worried that with his death, the truth about Emanuela would be buried along with him. Now, at this point, things look pretty grim. 20 years have gone by. There's no answers. The family still believed that she was alive, but they hoped that if she wasn't, someone would tell them so they could put her to rest. They just want to bring flowers to her grave if she is not alive anymore. That same year, another mysterious, anonymous call would crack the case wide open. A caller called, and again anonymously, into the Italian show called Chi l'ha visto. Means, and they said this phrase: to find a solution, find out who is buried in the crypt at Santa Pollinare, and find out about the favor Renatino did for Cardinal Poletti at the time. So, journalist Rafael Notariale started investigating immediately.
I was going to say, I just got chills, and I have no idea why, like what that even means.
Right? Doesn't it seem like, what? Yeah, I know. So she went into the crypt, and she discovered that the famed Roman gangster Enrico Renatino de Pedis had been buried there in the basilica. He was the leader of one of the two factions of the Roman gang, the Banda della Magliana. Now, this burial is highly unusual because this resting place is very prestigious. No one had been allowed to be buried there in more than a century. So why would a mobster earn this great honor? The church says that the Pedis was a generous benefactor to the basilica and that he dedicated himself to helping the poor. So because of his actions, the church granted him an exception and allowed him to be buried there. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, right? So after doing some, I forgot. Let me show you. This is Enrico de Pedis. Okay. And just kind of as a side note, well, I'll get back there because I don't want to spoil that little bit. So I'll go back to that. But that's him. Okay. And Notariale did some more research and found out that he had once been arrested because they had tracked his girlfriend, Sabrina Minardi. So Notariale decided to try and track her down. After a lot of effort, she found herself in Minardi's apartment. And not only that, Minardi agreed to tell her story. And it took about a year to get all of the information that she had. But I will tell you what she said. One hot summer day in 1983, Minardi and DePedis went to a nearby lake. And later that day, a driver approached the pair and Minardi noticed a young girl in the car. DePedis spoke to the driver and the girl was handed off to DePedis. He told Minardi that she had to take the girl to her parents' house for a few days. It was about an hour outside of Rome. And he promised her that it would only be 2, maybe 3 days at most. So she agreed to do this and drove the girl about an hour, right? The hour drive to this house. Those are parents. It was a detached home. It wasn't an apartment. So nobody would have really noticed what was going on. Noise wouldn't be an issue, nothing. And at this point, Minardi says she doesn't recognize the girl at all. It's just a girl. When they arrived at the house, a woman named Adelaide met them in the front. Adelaide's job was just to take care of the girl. She fed her, she made sure she showered, kept her confined to the bedroom, and sadly, kept her sedated. Minardi recalls the girl just moaning almost constantly. In an interview, she said that she can still hear the sound in her head to this day, and it causes her a lot of pain. As the news of Emanuela's disappearance became more and more widespread, Minardi recognized the girl locked in the bedroom as Emanuela. They had cut her hair, but she was still so recognizable. The 2 to 3 days passed. She was still there. After 10 days, the Betty said that she had to be moved to a house in Monteverde where they could keep her in a basement. And after this time, she didn't really know what happened to the girl. But sometime later, the Pettis calls Minardi again. Says, meet me at this local bar, the Bar Giancolo. Okay, she goes over, she meets him. After waiting a few minutes, a woman arrives in a Renault 5 car with a girl inside. Once again, Minardi recognizes her as Emanuela. The Pettis handed Minardi car keys and pointed to a green BMW that was down the street. The Pettis instructed her to take the girl to the Vatican petrol station, which is only about 5 minutes away. And once again, Minardi agreed to help him. During the drive, she considered actually letting Emanuela go, but she couldn't even get the girl to respond to simple questions. She feared that she wouldn't make it on her own. When she pulled up to the petrol station, she found a black Mercedes with Vatican plates. She waited to see who would exit the car and was taken by surprise when a priest wearing a full-length robe with buttons and sporting a wide-brimmed hat approached her. He took the girl, forced her into the Mercedes, and drove away. Minardi stood stunned for a moment. Then she drove back to Rome to meet the Pettis. She confronted him and said, "What mess have you roped me into?" She said she knew everything. She knew who the girl was, and she needed to know everything else that was going on. The Pettis coldly responded, "Sabri, it's all a game of power. Don't you get that?"
Wow.
Right. Yep. That's her story.
That's
and then
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh. And at one point, Minardi claimed that the last time she saw Emanuela, or that was the last time that she saw Emanuela. But in another interview, she said that Emanuela was killed and that she was disposed of in a cement mixer at a construction site. After investigating this claim, police decided that she had actually confused this event with another event because she started heavily using drugs at the time. So they actually believe that her story is true, just not the ending of it. So, and again, that story changes. As of the most recent interviews, she does not mention that. So it's possible that she has now countered that and does not tell that part of the story, but that is out there. So, yeah. It is hard to say whether or not that story is true, but there were some corroborating pieces of evidence. For one, all the locations, distances, times traveled, everything was described with a really high level of accuracy. Police actually said that her memory was admirable. And later, another former member of the banda claimed that they did kidnap Emanuela, that had been common knowledge throughout the gang. And also, police investigated the house that Minardi mentioned in Monteverde, and it did have a basement in it. And not only that, it was owned by a woman whose first name was Daniela, who was closely connected with the banda. And as solid as all of this sounds, there's still no actual proof that any of it happened. So you can't ask.
She said, he said.
Yeah, exactly. The Petties died in a shooting in the 90s, so you can't go to him.
Right.
Right? So you can't ask him. She, told her story, but there is some backup to it, but there's no way to prove it. And there's another question. Go ahead, though.
I was just saying that's messed up.
It is. The only thing about all of this is that we still can't answer the question of why Emanuela? Why would they take this girl? Why would they not have taken a higher level official from the Vatican, right? Somebody really close to the Pope.
Or someone who was pretty enough.
Yeah, right? Oh, right? I mean, yeah. Yikes. And believe it or not, there is another piece of the puzzle just waiting to be discovered.
I hope so.
Oh, this is a little complicated. Now, in order to understand the next piece of the puzzle, we actually have to go back in time to 1981. Okay. This man, Roberto Calvi, was the chairman and CEO of the Banco Ambrosiano, one of the largest private Italian banks. And the Vatican was such a heavy investor. It was thought of as a Catholic bank, and Calvi was often called God's banker. And there was also, of course, the Vatican Bank, which was headed by the American bishop, Paul Marcinkus. Now, both Marcinkus and Pope John Paul II were very strongly anti-communist. The Pope, being from Soviet-dominated Poland, witnessed firsthand the outlawing of practicing Catholicism and the anti-religious Soviet system, which promoted atheism. The Cold War era even saw the Pope and President Ronald Reagan with a common enemy. So, let's return again to another event, the attempted assassination of Pope John Paul II. The date that it happened was the 13th of May at 7:17, which we call 5:17 p.m. 17:17. I think I said that wrong. So, the date was the 13th of May at 7:17, which we call 5:17 p.m. This date directly corresponds to the Fatima prophecy, which occurred on May 13th, 1917. A lady dressed in white, shining brighter than the sun, approached 3 children in this prophecy. They believed that they were visited by the Virgin Mary herself. And part of the prophecy said that a pope would be killed unless the Russian Empire was brought back to Catholicism. So the Pope quickly made this connection to the date and the prophecy and the attempted assassination and recognized himself as the Pope in this prophecy. And with this, he redoubled his efforts to end the communist regime. So the Pope authorized sending millions of dollars to help anti-Polish communist labor movement Solidarity. And then just so you can see, Solidarity was a huge movement. You can see all these people. You can see a little. It's hard to see on the signs, but they Solidarność, which is solidarity. And the Vatican is supposed to use its funds for good works, right? Funding missions, building cathedrals, helping the poor, not political purposes. So
Great how they all like came together for like one common cause. Someone should think of a word for that.
I wonder what word that could be. So to get around the fact that they were not supposed to be using the money for this, Archbishop Marcinkus and God's banker Calvi worked very closely together in a money laundering scheme. The Banco Ambrosiano received money from private investigators and from private investors and the mafia. The bank then sent the money to the Vatican Bank, which sent the money to shell corporations. Now, why send it through the Vatican, you might ask? Do you know why?
For its blessing, clearly.
Well, don't forget, the Vatican is a sovereign nation. They are not held to foreign exchange control. So they can send it to a shell company with no paperwork.
It's like an offshore account, but
Yes.
it's totally onshore.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's exactly what they did. So it goes to the shell company, and then the shell company sends it back to the Vatican. So it basically goes from dirty money, clean money, because it's coming from an actual company now, right? And then the Vatican gives it back to the Banco Ambrosiano, right? Still no foreign exchange paperwork. We don't have to worry about any of that. And this clean money goes back to investors with interest.
Holy buckets.
Yeah. And you can read about this. It's very, you can find a lot of this information if you're still confused about it, but that's what happened. So, personally, I think that what happened here is that the Vatican became involved in this scheme to fund solidarity. They thought that ending this communistic rule was God's will. It was God's work. It was for the greater good. So in all of that, it was something you had to break laws technically, but again, for the greater good, right? So I think that's kind of how they justified it. And whether or not you agree with that, obviously, is another story, but that's just my thoughts on their thoughts.
Wait, churches can justify something
I mean,
like that?
when has that ever happened?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Now, as a corroborating piece of evidence, Sabrina Minardi actually claimed in some of her interviews that she would bring designer bags just filled to the brim with cash. And she would actually bring them directly to Marcinkus. Yeah, just a little tie-in. No, yeah.
We don't really care what she says, though.
I mean, what does she know?
Right. Did you prove it?
I know. Yeah. So everything was going according to plan in this little scheme until the spring of 1982. The Banco Ambrosiano fell into bankruptcy. Now, they lost billions and billions and billions of lire. This meant that investors were out also millions to billions. Even worse for the bank, every document started to go under review. This left the mafia, one of the bank's biggest investors, out a huge chunk of money. And it's thought that they were going after Calvi to pressure him to get their money back. The mafia would have thought that the Vatican would be the most likely way to achieve this. And because the Vatican has huge amounts of wealth, and they could be blackmailed due to their involvement with money laundering. So, as this money laundering scheme came to light, in the blink of an eye, Calvi disappeared. Now, June 19th, 1982, a postal clerk from the Daily Express newspaper in London was walking across the Blackfriars Bridge. Looking down, he was utterly shocked to see a body hanging from the bridge. They found it to be Roberto Calvi. Yep. It was actually initially ruled a suicide, due to the stress of the bank collapse. But Calvi's family really doubted it. They said, no, wait, no. He is Catholic. Suicide is the ultimate sin. No matter what, he never would have done it. So they hired a private forensic investigator who recreated the suicide attempt and studied all of the conditions. And they actually found that it could not have been a suicide, and it must have been a murder. So it's theorized that he was murdered as a message from the mafia, possibly to the Vatican, to give them their money. He was hung from Blackfriar Bridge, right, which is an order of friars in the church. And he also was found with all kinds of money, just cash in his pockets from all over the world. So it's very possible they were saying money and religion. But again, we don't know.
Crazy.
Yeah. So all of this seems like something out of a movie. The Catholic Church, in order to fight for religious freedom, becomes entangled with the mafia and money laundering. The mafia comes after the church itself. It sounds really far-fetched, but still sounds possible. But
sure.
Now, with all of this, how does it connect back to Emanuela? Well, one can argue that the mafia turned to the Banda della Magliana to kidnap her, to send a message to the Pope that they wanted their money back. But still, why her? Right? It makes sense. Kidnap somebody close to the Pope. You might get your money back. But still, why her? It's not making sense.
And why was the Pope so vocal early on to be like, I'm very close with this family?
Especially when they said, they never actually met him and they never had him visit. I mean, they probably met him in the way many people do, like at a service or, a blessing kind of things. But yeah, they'd never had a private audience with him. Yeah, I know. Something doesn't make sense. Now, in 2013, it just keeps getting stranger. They're in the middle of investigating Minardi's testimony. And a filmmaker, named Marco Accetti steps forward. And he changed the entire story. He contacted a reporter and said that he had something very important to share. And the reporter met him at the former De Laurentiis film studio, where Accetti led them through the prop room, and he showed the reporter what Accetti claimed to be Emanuela's flute. The Orlandi family came immediately, and they noted that it did look exactly like her instrument, from the wear on the case, the color of the velvet on the inside. It was even missing the cleaning rod that her little sister Maria Cristina would take from her case. But again, they needed no more convincing that this was her flute, but they wanted proof. So they did a DNA test, and the DNA test came back, and due to age and the amount of dust on the flute, they just couldn't lift any from it. So again, we cannot definitively say it's hers, but it does look a lot like it.
Okay.
So
where did he get it?
Yeah, exactly. Where did he get it? He claims that he took part in the kidnapping as part of a group that feared how powerful the Vatican was, and the claims that there was Soviet involvement in the attempted assassination of the Pope. The group feared that this would lead the Vatican to sever relations with Eastern European countries completely. And they decided to blackmail the Vatican and convinced the gangster De Pedis to get involved with the offer, right, and of recovering the money that he lost, or that the whole mafia gang lost in the Banco Ambrosiano. Okay. So he says that they actually approached multiple girls and that Emanuela had actually agreed to the kidnapping. He says that they convinced her to do it by telling her that her father was in trouble and that he was going to lose his job and their home. But if she agreed to the plot, they would make sure that their family would be okay. He claims that they kidnapped another girl. This is the student that I mentioned earlier. This time she was from Rome. Her name was Mirella Gregori. And was pretty much done in the same fashion. The details are startlingly similar. And I encourage you to look into her case as well, but it's also a lot. So it would be for another day. Just so you know, that case is also still unsolved. Accetti said that everything was going well at first. They moved Emanuela into a lodging house in a cheap room and they could stay for a few days. And he recalls that the two of them would actually go out for walks in the middle of Rome. Of course, Emanuela wore a wig, but they would even do things like they would go and get ice cream together. When asked why they kidnapped Emanuela specifically, Accetti said, that subject is far too vast to explain. he does say that mostly lower-level members of the Vatican organized the kidnapping. And in 1983, Aja was starting to implicate Russia and the KGB in the assassination attempt, so they needed a way to silence him or distract the public from what was going on. So Accetti claims to have made all the phone calls to the Orlandi house that were from the American. 6 months after the abduction, Accetti was arrested for manslaughter of a child in a motor accident and spent a year in jail. So this actually does work out for the timing of the calls because they did stop after, October. Yeah. So he says he doesn't know what happened to her during that time period. They decided to do some voice analysis on the recordings. Accetti was not a match for the original calls from the American, but he was a match for later calls.
Yes, he was the understudy.
Yep. He claims that after 30 years, of course, his voice has changed. Recording technology wasn't as good. He says he definitely did it the whole time, but that's not what the voice analysis is. So was he just trying to insert himself into the story? Pietro Orlandi was contacted to do a television interview with Accetti himself. So he was asking him questions, and he just started becoming more and more convinced that he had never even met Emanuela, especially based on his descriptions of her. The final straw was when Pietro asked him what the American said had happened to Emanuela in the first days that she had been taken. This information had never been made public. Accetti could not remember what happened. Pietro believed that Accetti made up the entire account, just using media that was available to the public.
Wait, but why would like a creative person, like a filmmaker, want any sort of publicity?
Yep. Couldn't think of a reason. So Accetti actually underwent psychological evaluation, and the forensic psychologist said that he had a very strong need to be the center of attention. Accetti actually seemed to enjoy talking about what had happened to Emanuela, and he concluded that Accetti has narcissistic histrionic personality let me try that one more time because it's a lot. Narcissistic. Okay, hold on. I actually lost my place. There it is. Okay, one more time. He concluded that Accetti had narcissistic histrionic personality disorder with psychopathic elements. This means that he is narcissistic and he will put himself at the center of any story. After this, Accetti was accused of autocalumnia, which is the act of confessing to a crime that you didn't commit. And he did this in order to deceive a judge. The forensic psychiatrist also concluded that there were absolutely true elements to his story, but that he's not telling everything he knows. And I can't help but wonder if he's not telling the full story because it takes him away from the center. And if he does have this personality disorder, we might not ever know. So that's Marco Accetti's story.
Wow.
I know. Confusing yet. So in 2013, we have a new pope, Pope Francis. He was seen as somebody who would really like to reform the church. He wanted more transparency in the Vatican in general. And before giving his first blessing as pope, he actually asked the people for their blessing, and he bowed his head to them. This was completely unprecedented and showed that he wanted to fundamentally change things. Now, about 2 weeks before his election, Pope Francis held a mass in Emanuela's parish of Sant'Anna. The Orlandis made sure that they were present and even had a moment with the Pope after. Pietro recalls the soon-to-be Pope said to him, "Emanuela sta in cielo," or "Emanuela is in heaven." Pietro replied, "My hope is that she's still alive." And Francis simply repeated, "Emanuela sta in cielo."
Oh.
Pietro was left wondering if he was attempting to be comforting or if he knew something more.
Yeah. Oh, man.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. In 2016, the world was rocked by this event. It was called VatiLeaks, the biggest leak in history of secret documents from the Vatican archives. The documents detailed corruption and financial mismanagement, And the journal. Oh, I realized. Sorry, I still have this up. Let me see it so you can see us. All right. Let me do one more thing over here. There we go. My music. There we go. All right. Let's get back to the story. I'll go back to here so you guys can all have a nice transition. So let's go back. In 2016, the world was rocked by an event called VatiLeaks, the biggest leak in the history of secret documents from the Vatican archives. The documents detailed corruption and financial mismanagement. The journalists involved in the leaks were put on trial and were well known to the public at this time. During the proceedings, a witness came forward and described an incredible event. 2 years prior, somebody got into the Vatican ministry using their key, therefore leaving no real evidence. And then they used a blowtorch to get into the vaults and stole many documents. Dun, dun, dun. Yes. Oh, yeah, my music doesn't want to play anymore. We'll see. I will keep talking anyways. We can put more music in.
We don't need the music. We're into the story.
I know. The story is amazing. So they used a blowtorch to get into one of the vaults and stole many documents. In it, there was a dossier about Emanuela Orlandi. Now, this is huge because the Vatican denied time and time again that such a document or even investigation existed. They claimed that because the kidnapping happened outside of Vatican territory, there was no Vatican investigation. Now, one of the journalists who was on trial started calling some of his sources in the Vatican, and he kept saying that he felt like there was one person in particular who they would know something. He just really felt like they have to. I know they know. So he kept calling and calling, and eventually this guy says, okay, so I have not read these. I'm sorry, I can't give you anything. A second call, he said, well, I did read the documents, but I can't give you anything because I don't have them in my hands. Okay. The third call, the journalist said, can we meet in Rome?
Ooh.
Or yeah, he said to the journalist, the source of the journalist, can we meet in Rome? So the journalist knew this must be something big.
Yeah.
Now, at the meeting, he handed the journalist a folder. Okay, and in the folder was this document. So here's what it looked like. It was a photocopy. Okay. The document is titled, I know you probably can't really read it. I just want to see what it looks like. But the document is a cover page to start. And it says, this is a list of expenses sustained by the Vatican State for activities related to the citizen, Emanuela Orlandi. This title alone indicated that someone in the Vatican knew exactly what happened to Emanuela. Following this page, a list of expenses went on for years. Okay. It had things like food, accommodation, medical expenses, travel, and surprisingly, these expenses were not listed in Italy. They occurred in London.
What?
Yeah. One of the most important expenses listed is boarding and lodging and expenses at 176 Chapman Road in London, totaling 8 million lire. Looking into it, 176 Chapman Road doesn't actually exist. However, 176 Clapham Road does exist. And it's a hostel for girls owned by a Catholic congregation with close ties to the Vatican.
What?
Yeah. So the journalist actually went there. I know. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah. The journalist went there, but there was no record of Emanuela Orlandi staying there. But obviously, if she had been lodging there, it would make sense if they'd used a pseudonym, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's speculated that she could have been brought there after the exchange with Minardi at the petrol station. It's possible that both of those stories are true. Again, and that's just speculation. There's no proof of that. There's, nothing linking those two stories, but it does seem interesting. Did she know something too much? They had to get rid of her. Did they, some people said after going through everything she went through, they just wanted to send her somewhere where she could be close to God. They could kind of wash their hands of it again, but who knows? Now, the biggest and most important thing in this document was this. And again, difficult to read, and it's in Italian, but the final expense listed on this document was 21 million lire for general activity and transfer to Vatican City with relative handling of the final paperwork. This sounds like Emanuela died in London, and these were her final expenses to bring her back to the Vatican City and to be buried. Very grim, though entirely plausible. Right? So this was huge. Right?
Yeah.
But again, there is one major problem. These documents were not directly released by the Vatican. They were taken out of the Vatican by a party, turned over to another party, and then made public. So their authenticity can't actually be confirmed. We don't know if these really came out of the Vatican or not. So while astonishing, you cannot take it as hard evidence.
Right.
Right.
Kind of like,
so hard.
I don't know, stories in the Bible.
What can you do? You believe it or you don't.
Right.
Right?
It was passed down over the years.
So hard.
He said this, she said that.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Now, a couple more developments have come to light and are currently being looked into. A controversial archbishop named Carlo Marco Vigano claims now, more recently, that the Vatican office that he worked at in 1983 received a phone call at about 8 o'clock on the night of Emanuela's disappearance. He said that the caller claimed to have kidnapped Emanuela. Now, if this is true, it's so important because the kidnapping hadn't even been reported yet. So that would make the call authentic. So
Okay.
If that happened, though, then the Vatican potentially knew about the kidnapping, but didn't report it to the police or the family. This would also make the first call to the Vatican and not to the family. This would show the kidnapper's priority may have been influencing or coercing the Vatican to do something rather than the family.
Right.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Now I'm going to throw in one more major plot twist because this evidence just very recently came out in the last couple of years. A close childhood friend of Emanuela's has come forward anonymously with her story. She claims that Emanuela called her about a week before her disappearance and said that she had a secret she needed to tell her. Thinking it was a secret about a boy, the friend agreed to meet her as soon as possible. As she pressured Emanuela, like friends do, tell me, she pressured her about the secret. She began to realize that this was not the fun secret that she had imagined. She says that Emanuela confided in her that during one of her walks through the Vatican garden, someone very close to the Pope made sexual advances toward her. If this is true, it would be a really, really big deal. And an event like this had never been reported within Vatican walls. We kind of now, at this point in time, right, again, through transparency, trying to change things in the church, we've heard about things that have happened. But again, back then, it was completely silenced.
Right.
So it is entirely possible that the kidnapping could have been a cover-up for this event, a way to make their problem disappear. Another possibility is that the Banda della Magliana found out about this secret, kidnapped Emanuela in order to blackmail the Vatican and get their money back. Whatever happened, this would be a huge scandal. So it would be worth it, right, for that kind of blackmail to them. And again, at this point, that's all speculative because this is really new information. It has not been looked into. but she has come forward with this. And so far, we only have her testimony. Nobody else can corroborate it. She said that she did not tell anybody else. So it's kind of a difficult truth to accept with no backup, but it is what she said. So we don't know. And this, sadly, is where our story ends. And how do you make heads or tails of this? Like, do we use Occam's razor? Do we say the simplest answer is the most likely? But then, what is the simplest answer? Do we just ignore all the circumstantial evidence and say it was a kidnapping gone wrong? Do we say there was no big ulterior motive? Do we go with the testimony of Sabrina Minardi? Do we blame the Banda de la Magliana and just ignore, some of the discrepancies that happened, but her account was so detailed? Makes sense. Yeah. Or is it a cover-up that goes all the way to the top of the Vatican? I wish I could say. I wish I could bring some peace of mind to the Orlandi family so that they could have some comfort. Her mother is still alive. She still remains hopeful that they will find her daughter. And her brother Pietro is still searching for her every day, following any lead that he possibly can. And her sisters mourn her daily. And I sincerely hope that someone finds that missing piece of the puzzle and we finally see this case resolved. But until then, it will remain a mystery.
Wow. Let's hear it for Amanda putting all that together. That was a lot of information.
So much information.
And how do you even begin to wrap your head around it? Holy buckets indeed.
Right? Yeah. Like, it starts off as I hate to use those terms, but like a simple kidnapping case, right? Because it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It goes all the way to the top.
Right.
I have no idea.
And you're saying they just released like a documentary about it on Netflix?
Yeah, they did. So if you want to actually see these people, hear, their words, you can. It is in Italian, so you need to read subtitles, but it was very good. I know some people, some people don't. I don't mind them, but some people do. But yeah. Oh man.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, here on the Magical Mystery Hour, with we love to mix our stories with music, live music here on the air, and I get to follow that with a song. Yes. I should have gone first. I was like, maybe I should do my song after your story, but now I'm like, holy smoke.
Emily Thatcher says, I just added the documentary to my watch list.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting.
I know. And David said, yeah, she even left a whole bunch of things out. I did. There's even more to it. It's a fascinating case, and it could have, like I said, it could go all the way top. It could involve the church. It could not at all. It's so impossible to say. As I said, you just wish we had those couple missing pieces.
Yeah. Wow. It's kind of the same with my story too. It's just like if one person comes forward and says, hey, I've got this information. Yes.
And I can't help but think that one person is Sabrina Minardi. She did come forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But prove it.
Exactly. All right. So what do you have for us?
Well, with both of our stories, unfortunately the families only have memories of their loved ones that went missing, and photos that you shared and that we're sharing here on the live stream. And I'm going to play an original song from my friend Dan Franklin. And I felt like it was kind of, it's not true crime or murder mystery, but it does follow that theme of keeping people in your memory and having the photographs. This is You Can't Get There From Here by Dan Franklin.
Right.
After I cough. Grandson, spend some time with me. I got some pictures here you gotta see. This one's me in Georgia. She's quite a catch. Now don't you ever tell your grandma that. I'd like to introduce you to these friends of mine. They're quite a ways away and yet so near. I'd like to take you to the place we'd always go, but you can't get there from here. Here's me and Ray after the war. I can't remember what we were fighting for. This one's almost all of my old crew. Every one of them the best of friends I ever knew. I'd like to introduce you to these friends of mine. They're quite a ways away and yet so near. I'd like to take you to the place we'd always go, but you can't get there from here. Sometimes I lie awake at night, wondering how I've come so far. And if it weren't for these photographs, I might not remember who they are. Grandson, remember this one thing. Hold on tightly to your memories. I'd like to introduce you to these friends of mine. They're quite a ways away and yet so near. I'd like to take you to the place we'd always go, but you can't get there from here. No, you can't get there from here. Something like that.
That was
actual
great.
song. The actual song is performed and much more beautiful. Find Dan Franklin on Spotify. Wait, no, he hates Spotify.
Yeah, don't do it on Spotify.
Anywhere other than Spotify, find Dan Franklin, and you can't get there from here to hear it straight from him. It's a beautiful song.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. right. I know this is a little aside from the audio podcast. We'll have a little chat here and say, how's everybody feeling out there? Are we ready for a second story, or should we do a part 2 another evening? Let us know in the chat what you think. You want to stick around for another hour and hear another story, or should we try and find a night next week to finish it off? But I think I missed a chat.
Emily Thatcher says, ready. David says, I could go either way. Kelsey's ready.
Dari's like, I don't know, man. Some people already said, I'm going to go to bed. Yeah. All right. Let's do this. Let's hear from producer Craig about things that are coming up here on the Vaudacity Network, and then we will reconvene and look at the chat and see what people said.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing story. That's all I can say. That it's like what is it? I mentioned in the chat Usual Suspects, but blow it up even more.
I know.
And it's like a never-ending convolution.
Yeah.
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 Great job again, Amanda.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, fantastic, Amanda.
It's an amazing story. I can't. Whew.
And if you said there was more to come, more than just what you shared, OMG, this is definitely a miniseries.
Yeah. It is. It was. I mean, and the documentary is long. It's about probably 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, to give you guys a little bit of a break, what the first thing I'd like to do is just mention to everybody that, you don't have to, but we would love your support. Those of you watching here on the Vaudacity Network, these are the individual cast tip jars for Venmo for both Amanda and Paul. So, we appreciate your support. We love that you're here with us. We love that you share when we go out to the podcasting. But if you'd like to share a little bit more, we appreciate that immensely. To come up on the Vaudacity Network, starting next Tuesday at 8 p.m., want to welcome David Benjamin as the Piano Man, classical piano and fresh puns performed live. He's got his show coming up, and I believe his topic, he said, was Happy Beethoven. So, should be interesting to see what David says and shares that is Happy Beethoven. Amanda on Demanda, who's with us tonight, will be back on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And her show is coming up where she sings your requests live. Go ahead and private message Amanda with your songs. I don't know if she has a topic yet, but keep an eye out in Facebook and on your socials, and she will share that with you, and she will ask for your requests. And it's amazing to watch her do all these songs. She and the wheel work well together, and it's fun to watch. So please join us Wednesday evening starting at 8 p.m. Pacific right here on the Vaudacity Network. Also coming up this Thursday, we are going to welcome back Hunter Ackerman. He's been on a vacation a little bit with us, but he is going to join us for episode 127, live acoustic originals and covers. He will be returning this Thursday starting at 8 p.m. Love to see Hunter, love to hear what he shares and what he shares with us, not just musically, but intellectually. It's fun. It's a great show. Hunter, the Lovecast, number 127 this Thursday at 8 p.m. And then finally, as a part of our promotions for this evening, the Polly's Picnic Cruise 2023 is coming up Friday, March 31st through Monday, April 3rd. Music and comedy on a boat. It's fun. And there have been several cruises with bands, and we did one last year for Polly's Picnic on a Cruise. It's time to do it again. And this time, not only will we have Paul Carganilla, but we'll also have Dan Franklin and Stephanie Renee Wall, the Franklin Wall Music Group, Hunter Ackerman, and Mike and Nicole Pierce, as well as many, many more. Won't you join us? Contact Anna Gianavola or Dari or Christina in the chat and find out where things stand with room availability. We would love to see you there. It is a fun cruise. If you've never been on a cruise, even though it's a short weekend, it's a great way to get started cruising. Love it, love it, love it. And that's what's coming up on the Vaudacity Network. And we are so grateful to have you with us tonight as part of the Magical Mystery Hour. We will be getting back to this, we'll make our decision, I should say, in just a moment. I have not been able to see that at all, Paul, but what do you see on the network there?
You know, some people need to go to bed, but some people want to stay up. It's like halfsies.
Should we spin the wheel?
Right. Let me check in when Amanda comes back. We'll see how she's feeling.
I'm here. I just,
Hello.
with
Oh,
Craig
you
on
can't
screen,
be
so I'm
listening.
giving, so I'm giving
All
Craig
right,
some
well then
screen
I
time.
will bid you adieu while Amanda comes back. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Let me get you full screen again.
Here we are.
Let's do it.
Am I a little small?
A little bit. I'm working on getting you. I don't know why Zoom does this thing. I have to like full screen, unfull screen, pin, repin. It's really weird. There you are. All right.
I'm good to push to another night if you are, but I know like it's crazy like
Oh, I know.
with the holidays coming
It's
up.
true,
We're going to
it's
turn the
true.
corner now and it's going to be Christmas.
That's true. Maybe we should just push through it.
Yeah. I'm down if you're down.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go.
All right.
I'm energized from telling my story.
I got a second tea
All right. I've got my water.
and just a shot of Makers. Loosen up the vocals.
I know.
Obviously, I may have to stop and cough at some points.
We will forgive you.
Detail. But yeah. So do you want? This is us talking behind the scenes.
Yeah, because we didn't
We're gonna
discuss
edit
it
this out of
before.
the podcast, obviously. But do you want to do your song before my story?
That's a tough question. Maybe that way I can relax during your story.
Yeah. I mean, we've got our duet for
Yeah.
afterward anyway.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. Then I will do it before.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
So my story it has a bunch of similarities to Amanda's in that somebody went missing. There's a search. There's a whole lot of different information to consider. A family is obviously grieving and missing their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And but with my story, the family actually gets a little bit of closure.
Oh, good.
They actually find the body.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert. But when we do this here on the show, we just give each other like some basic facts about our story
Very, very
to kind of
small.
inspire a song from the other person. So
Yes.
I told Amanda a little bit about my story, and what did you what inspired musical inspiration came to mind?
One of my favorite songs, actually. I always love this song. James Taylor, who I also love. I decided to do Fire and Rain because, when somebody's gone, that line always reverberates in my mind. I always thought that I'd see you again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if somebody disappears, that's what I think of.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Amanda Benjamin with Fire and Rain.
All right. Like I said, one of my favorites. Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you. I walked out this morning and I wrote down this song. I just can't remember who to send it to. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find Don't you look down upon me, Jesus. You gotta help me make a stand. Just got to see me through another day. My body's aching and my time is at hand. I won't make it any other way. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Been walking my mind to an easy time, my back turned toward the sun. Lord knows when the cold wind blows, it'll turn your head around. Well, there's hours of time on the telephone line to talk about things to come. Sweet dreams and flying machines and pieces on the ground. Oh, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again. Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things coming my way this time around now. Thought I'd see you, fire and rain now.
It is so awesome to hear you just like the leaps and bounds you're making on guitar. So cool.
Thanks. It's kind of like what I always wanted to do. And I was like, oh, I'll never get there. I'll never be able to do that.
Beautiful.
I'm now at a spot where I'm like, I'm not exactly where like my ultimate goal would be, but I'm like, whoa, like I went from like here to way up here. Now I just
should always keep pushing, even if you get to your ultimate goal.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I'll have a new goal.
Yeah. That was beautiful. Great job.
Thank you. I love, like I said, it's one of my favorites. And I said, thinking about true crime or people, disappearing from your life, suddenly that's something to think about.
Well, we'll dive into mine.
All right.
No pun intended. I am going to present and share with everyone listening here this evening the story of the mysterious death of Rey Rivera. Rey was a man who went missing in the Mount Vernon neighborhood of Baltimore one afternoon in 2005. I first heard about this a few years back. I listened to a true crime podcast called Crime Junkie. Which is one of the more popular ones out there now. And I heard this story, and then like not long after I heard the story, Netflix relaunched Unsolved Mysteries.
Yes.
And they used this story as their pilot episode for the relaunch.
Okay.
And it always just grabbed me, and I found it so confounding and so perplexing. It's a lot like not as confounding and perplexing as your Vatican story, but the Dyatlov Pass incident, like not everything adds up. A lot of things, there's a lot of different things make sense a different way, but it doesn't all click like a Rubik's Cube.
Right.
And it's such a fascinating story. And after it came out on Unsolved Mysteries, like the internet went crazy. Reddit went nuts. Like people started doing their own online deep dives, and I just found out what Reddit was this past week when I started to dig stuff out of it. Like, what is this? Ooh, what is that?
Reddit is a fascinating place.
I don't fully understand it or its power yet.
Oh, it is powerful. It is all powerful.
Feel free to dig into all of the Reddits after the story here tonight. But for the story that I'm going to present, this is information that I found, and I've arranged it as best as I wanted to feed it to you, because there's a bunch of different ways it could enter your brain. Mm-hmm. But if you can, for the time being, while you're listening to the story, stay out of the Reddits and off of the Googles, and just take the meal as I have prepared it here this Thanksgiving weekend. Before we jump into the actual mystery of him going missing, I want to lay a foundation introducing who I believe to be 3 key players in our story. Just to give some context for once we get actually deeper into his disappearance. Player number 1, a gentleman by the name of Bill Bonner. And correct me if I'm wrong or if you disagree, but doesn't he remind you of what's the name of the Simpsons character with all the money?
Oh, Monty Burns.
Mr. Burns.
Yes.
This is Bill Bonner. He founded a company called The Agora back in 1978. And according to theagora.com, he was interested in publishing ideas and opportunities commonly overlooked by the mainstream media. He started with International Living, which was a newsletter devoted to working, investing, and retiring overseas. Mm-hmm. After the success of this newsletter, the company grew slowly but steadily, one different publication at a time. And these publications are all like financial newsletters. And I'm like, what's a financial newsletter? And I'll explain in just a minute. Okay. But by the 1990s, the business had expanded to include several thriving publishing groups, and he relocated the business to the beautiful historic Baltimore City neighborhood of Mount Vernon, which is where our story takes place. And during that same time period, his company, The Agora's footprint stretched overseas with subscribers across the globe. And the business was sprouting up in major cities, including Paris and London and Melbourne, and more would follow. The workforce, as it spread across the globe, was growing from a handful to hundreds, and collectively, the groups all published dozens of newsletters and magazines in the areas of travel, health, business, and investing. And this guy, I found a little video clip from a recent video he put out. So where he, like I said, he started in the late 70s and he's still like doing his thing. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to give you a little insight into who this person is based on a short, this is the introduction. It's like a 3-minute introduction to like an 1.5-hour video that he just put out on YouTube a couple weeks ago. Okay. But this will give you insight into who this person is.
Okay.
He went to law school at Georgetown with Fed Chief Jerome Powell in the 1970s, then built the largest publishing empire of its kind, with more subscribers than the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal combined. Along the way, he's written 3 New York Times best-selling books. As perhaps the most antisocial rich guy in America, he rarely makes public appearances, instead retreating to his 100,000-plus acres in South America, his 2-century-old chateau in France, or his cottage in Ireland. But despite his wealth, this humble entrepreneur, who's regarded as one of the most important innovators of the internet revolution, still buys $30 Walmart jeans, drives a Ford F-150 pickup, and chases cattle on horseback. He's built 2 of his many homes with his own hands, an adobe structure of mud and stone built using Roman-era building techniques in Argentina. The other, a solar house built of ferrocement in the States. And today, this ultra-wealthy and successful man is going public with what he says is his fourth and final prediction of his 50-plus year career. Each of his other 3 big predictions have come true. And today, from his 200-year-old house in Ireland, you'll hear how 2 unstoppable and inevitable trends are on a collision course in America, like 2 runaway freight trains. And how this collision will cause the biggest disruption to our society, our financial markets, and our way of life in more than 50 years, leading to an event he calls America's Nightmare Winter. Get the facts you won't hear anywhere else.
America's Nightmare Winter. You better be ready and subscribe to my newsletter, or you won't be prepared and the world will end and you'll be on fire somewhere. This is Bill Bonner. Can you just tell from the video like how humble he is? Like the video says, like he's so humble. He's just so humble.
Yes,
Let's list all of his homes.
Yep.
The different countries that he lives. He still buys $30
And he's antisocial.
Walmart.
Just saying. Like,
So
they made a
antisocial.
point to saying he's antisocial.
And then he talks for the next 90 minutes on his video about like how you need to $30 Walmart. Yeah, that Dari says in the chat, $30 Walmart jeans. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think they cost $30.
I was going to say that's
but-
the most expensive pair of jeans at Walmart.
Right. But he doesn't know that because it's not true. But so like this is the guy at the head of this Agora company, and they do like, I don't know anything about money and investing, and that's all my wife. She's like a pro at all that stuff. But I do know that like the number one thing to drive somebody to buy something is to use fear. And
Absolutely.
that, I mean, did that video it yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
obviously
It was-
clearly
yeah.
geared to selling you something by making you scared.
Yes.
All right.
100%.
So that's Bill Bonner, or Mr. Burns. And so I want to talk about all the subsidiary companies of the Agora, and I'm just going to like lay this out because I didn't know, like subsidiary is a word I heard before, but I didn't know exactly what it was. So what is a subsidiary? It's a company that belongs to another company. Much like I found this online, like Nestle owns Wonka, and Wonka has like Nerds and Sweet Tarts and Laffy Taffy.
Right.
But they also own like Gerber and Power Bar, which are companies within themselves, but they're subsidiaries. And some like Laffy Taffy is a subsidiary of of Nestle. So that's just how subsidiaries work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess like I kind of knew like Disney owns ESPN, ABC, and
Hulu.
Marvel, and everything.
Yeah.
So that's subsidiaries, and the Agora subsidiaries. Agora has subsidiaries they're one of those companies that have subsidiaries that have subsidiaries that have subsidiaries, and but they're mostly like financial publications, financial newsletters, and these are things that people who are investing read to get their tips on where to put their money and what companies to invest in, stock tips, and all those kinds of things. So there are people who pay subscription fees to get different newsletters, to get their different tips. And the two main like daddy subsidiaries under Agora are Agora Financial and Stansberry Research. And they're both based in the same area of Baltimore that we're going to be talking about, called the Mount Vernon neighborhood. And right now I want to focus on one of them, and that is Stansberry Research. And its founder, who is our second key player that I wanted to talk about tonight, his name is Porter Stansberry. And with a name like Porter Stansberry, I'm going to pronounce it like that every time.
Definitely.
Side note, his name is it's Frank Porter Stansberry, and it's not his original name. Like his dad died in Vietnam.
Okay.
Super sad. And his mom remarried later. He has like a younger brother, and when she remarried, her husband, Frank Porter Stansberry, decided to rename her kids
What?
And so he renamed her oldest to Frank Porter Stansberry, just like him. And his younger brother, he renamed him to something else Stansberry, which I thought was like...
I mean, like, I can see changing your last name, but he
Right.
changed all the names?
Oh, he changed like his whole name.
What?
And I don't know how old he was when he changed it.
Yeah,
but I
I'm
know
wondering that too. Like, did he agree to this?
he had a younger brother, and dad died, and then mom remarried. So I imagine he had to be at least 4 or 5,
Right?
at least, when that
Probably.
happened. And isn't that weird to rename a kid?
Yeah,
like,
that's a little...
after you?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
I mean,
just a-
maybe they thought it was like a nice gesture. You're my child, and I want you to have my
Right.
name. You know, I don't
Or
know.
like, this is how much I love you, new husband. Go ahead and rename my children.
Yeah, I don't know. Something... Is it...
Odd.
Yeah.
I thought it was odd.
Yeah.
Anywho, that is neither here nor there.
Right.
Porter, who dropped the Frank, he's just Porter Stansberry. He is a self-proclaimed self-made man. Coming from a modest middle-class background, he was driven to be successful in the world of finances.
Mhm.
He really wanted to be that rich guy in nice suits with cigar hanging out of his mouth and helicopters. He wanted like all that stuff. So he went to school, University of Florida, and in the mid 1990s, when he was fresh out of college, he, as he says in recent podcasts, he was working from his kitchen table on a borrowed laptop that he couldn't afford,
Okay.
writing financial newsletters for an investment research company. And as I mentioned, like, so this is before like internet. They went out on the internet, so people would subscribe to these. They'd come in the mail, and it would show you the stock trends, and research companies would have to do this because you didn't have the internet and you didn't have apps to know where to put your money. So,
But stuff
you would
changes so
pay-
fast. I feel like by the time you get this in the mail, it's all going to be changing, you know?
right. Yeah. So you'd pay weekly or monthly or yearly subscription fees to get these. And he was writing one for this company.
Uh-huh.
And in 1996, the company he was working for was purchased by a man named Bill Bonner.
Ah.
And he fired everyone on the staff except for Porter and Porter's partner. I guess they were doing a pretty good job.
Ooh, what does that sound like?
Porter's partner, Steve. And he took them and he moved them to Baltimore, where the Agora was setting up their new like base camp.
Mm-hmm.
So he set up, he gave Porter his first like subsidiary, like his first company, which he called Pirate Investments, because he was gonna,
I was
really
going to
get in there
say,
and
pirate
pirate all the
investments,
tips.
it sounds like he's just going to steal all of your money. You're going to invest it,
Right.
and he's just going to pirate. He's going to be a pirate and take it all.
Well, he's probably, I think the way he tried to like sell you insider tips, like
Yeah.
we're all pirates,
We're
let's all get
Like,
together.
I'm a pirate, you're a pirate.
Yeah.
Which
So
also
that's-
is very effective, right? Like you're
Sure.
creating this little bond.
yeah. Let's all be pirates together.
Yeah.
And that was going really well,
Mhm.
from like the late 90s through 2002, which, according to Wikipedia, Stansberry sent out an email offering all of his subscribers, if they paid $1,000,
Uh-huh.
he was going to give them the name of a company that was purportedly about to obtain a contract to dismantle nuclear weapons for Russia.
What?
So I guess that was going to be like a big money maker. And so he told everybody, if you send me an extra $1,000 this week, I will give you the name of that company to invest in.
Okay, so if this is real, this is something I never understand. Isn't that like insider trading?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm just checking because sometimes you see these and I'm like, how is that not insider trading? And they're like, oh, well, if it's this, I don't know. It's confusing. But that to
But-
me sounds like insider trading.
Yeah. And if you look into it, so the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC,
Mm-hmm.
goes, dude, what? After like thousands and thousands of people paid the $1,000
Right.
for that tip, and it didn't pan out. So a bunch of people complained.
Right.
And so the SEC sued him in 2003 on the
Okay.
basis, and for his newsletters to be containing nothing more than like guesses
Mm-hmm.
and lies. accusing him to quote scheme and defraud public investors by disseminating false information in several internet newsletters. And these type of like lawsuits, like he fought tooth and nail. He's like, it wasn't an insider tip because I learned this. I'm not an insider, but I learned about it through different venues.
I'm not an insider. I just have the inside information, but I'm not an insider.
And my company's called Pirate Investors. And he's like, it's not false information because we got it from somebody else. So he's fighting the SEC, like, and this takes years.
Yeah.
And so in the meantime, while these lawsuits are happening with the SEC, he decided, Bill Bonner's like, why don't you just start another newsletter and just keep doing what you're doing under that title? And he was like, okay, cool. So he started a second newsletter called Stansberry Research. And it's had a couple of different names, but he's kept that one since then. And it's today reportedly worth $3 billion. It's a like publicly traded company worth $3 billion. So good for him.
Yeah, that's impressive.
I'm going to share their website right now. Since I asked everybody not to go Googling, I'll just go ahead and Google for you. Uh-oh. Whole screen. There it is. So this is Stansberry Research. This is the current website, and it's all like, hey, check out the article from Stansberry Digest, Matt McCall's Daily Insight, Health and Wealth Bulletin, and Daily Wealth. These are all different newsletters under the umbrella of Stansberry Research. And if you look at all the products, they're actually all listed here. These are all basically financial newsletters that are created by Stansberry Research. And I'll take you back to the main page. I don't know like what bearing this has on anything or how significant it is, but if you go down to meet the team at the bottom, and just, I don't know if you want to just tell me if you've seen a more jolly bunch of D-bags just smiling at you, ready to take your money.
Are those real?
Look at all the diversity here.
Oh,
there is a woman.
Yeah.
There's a woman there.
One.
But they're all like white dudes.
Yeah, look at, even she follows, suits the mold.
There's one guy who looks ethnic. That's cool. Good. They're trying to diversify. There's another gal there.
Goodness.
But so this is basically a fraternity of like dudes trying to make up tips and take your money.
Oh,
I mean,
my goodness. Like, yes.
That's Stansberry Research.
Wow.
All right. So I'm laying, so stick with me. We're not at the story yet. I'm just laying some ground. The third player tonight is the beautiful Baltimore Belvedere Hotel. The Belvedere is...
Oh, I've seen that. Please.
Have you?
Yeah, I definitely have seen this in a picture. I don't know why, though. I've seen this.
It is a Beaux Arts style building in Baltimore, obviously, designed by the Boston architectural firm of Parker and Thomas. It was built in 1902. It took about a year to build, I guess, 1902 to 03.
That seems like not very long, actually.
Right? It's huge.
Yeah.
It's still there, obviously. It's a landmark in the city's fashionable Mount Vernon district neighborhood. In 1991, it was converted. Well, it like in its years, it was a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. I see Diana Nicole in the chat. It is definitely haunted. Yes. Emily's thinking the same thing. Yes. And if you YouTube haunted Belvedere Hotel Baltimore, you'll find all kinds.
I wonder if that's where I've seen this building before.
It's possible.
I'm sure if there's ghost stories about it, I'm sure I've seen something on the internet about it.
In 1991, it was converted into condos. So it's not a hotel anymore. All the rooms are condos.
Okay.
But a lot of the areas in the hotel are still like open to the public. Like there's a bar on the bottom floor, and there's a bar nightclub on the top floor that I'll show you. But like mainly, like it's a beautiful place now it's a wedding venue. They have all these beautiful ballrooms, and I'll show you the spaces actually here. This is their website for their event page. You can, have your events, your weddings there. And where was I seeing all the different rooms? Events.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Venue spaces. That was it. Yeah, they have these just gorgeous,
Oh.
gorgeous ballrooms. Um, Several of them too, and you can. I mean, again, you can drop down a YouTube rabbit hole and just see
Yeah.
like people's wedding videos from this
Oh my goodness.
from like recent years. It's just gorgeous.
Wow.
And so here's what it looks like from the street. I'm going to take you on a little Google Maps tour. The front entrance is just beautiful.
Yes.
And once you go in, it's just like marble floors. And off to the left, there's the lobby bar is called the Owl Bar.
Okay.
And it like dates back to obviously when the place was built. And it still has like a bunch of the stuff from the original time. Back in Prohibition, they used these owls on the wall
Mm-hmm.
to signal people when a raid was happening. The
Oh.
owl's eyes would blink red,
What?
and people would like hide their actual booze, and bartenders would swap it out with iced tea or
Non-alcoholic,
whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just gorgeous, and
Wow.
there's so much history in there. So that bar is still in the lobby, and it's like still pretty popular for people who live in the area and come to
Mhm.
party. And then there's also a top floor. I mentioned the nightclub. It's called the 13th floor. And it is the actual top floor, and it has windows that look out
Wow.
at the city lights. And yeah, it's a
Yeah.
nice spot to get a drink and hang out and check out the views.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of the public spaces that are still open if you're not going for a wedding or
Mm-hmm.
an event. But I wanted to talk about the shape of the Belvedere.
Okay.
This is it from like 3D view,
Uh-huh.
and it is kind of shaped like a C,
Yeah.
if you can see the
Mhm.
C.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. We saw it.
Okay. And so this side of it faces out to a parking structure,
Okay.
but connecting the Belvedere to that parking structure is like a 2 or 3 floor, kind of like a mall, like a mini mall.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If I stand in the street here looking at it, that's the entrance to it. There's like bagel shop. There's another like restaurant, and in there's like offices and like
Okay.
a place where you can get your haircut, and just like different small businesses actually conduct business there in that little mall that's connecting this C-shaped Belvedere to. That's actually the Belvedere parking structure,
Okay.
and you can access the hotel
Mm-hmm.
all indoors from that parking structure, just on like the second and third floor, obviously.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that is
Okay.
just a quick introduction to the hotel itself.
Right.
And yeah, let me grab a
Okay.
sip of water.
Yes. Hydrate.
All right, so let's dive into the story of Rey Rivera.
Okay. Let's do it.
Huh. That's all the homework. That's all the boring stuff.
Got that out of
And
the way.
yeah, I think it'll really help once we
Yeah,
get
I'm sure.
rolling here. Let me introduce you to our tragic victim of the mystery. This is Rey Omar Rivera. He is, in my opinion, based on my research, a totally awesome dude. He's tall, dark, handsome, charismatic. He's got a big
I was
smile.
going to say, he has a great smile.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's a big guy. He's 6'5"
Wow.
and 250 pounds. He's like built. He was an athlete, a musician, a writer, a filmmaker.
What? He did it all.
Right. Like what is there not to like about this dude?
Yeah.
His friends and family will all tell you that he was such a happy guy, life of the party, creative, lots of energy,
Right.
big dreams. And at the time that he went missing, he was only 32 years old.
What?
Ray came from a super tight family,
Okay.
born to 2 Puerto Ricans, Angel and Maria. He grew up in Florida. He was the middle child. His older brother, Angel Jr., and little sister, Elena. They were super tight. Ray loved sports, especially basketball and water sports. He loved music. He learned to play piano by ear when his little sister Elena was taking lessons.
So jealous.
Right? He used to listen to his mom's records, and he fell in love with the sound of the cuatro, which is a Puerto Rican string instrument. It's like a 10-string guitar, like mid-sized guitar, but it's all tuned differently. It's like super cool sound. He loved to write stories, creative writing. He loved movies, loved watching movies, talking about movies, discussing movies.
Wow.
Of course, he did have his flaws.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes his friends said he was too loyal to some people who didn't deserve it.
Okay, I see that.
And he was afraid of heights.
Oh.
So he was not Superman.
I get this guy.
Unfortunately.
Like, I get him. I feel everything, except for maybe the being really tall and athletic. I mean, I was good at some sports. I did. Like, I was on the volleyball team and I like stuff like that and marching band and all that. So I won't say I'm not athletic, just not like super athlete.
Yeah. And how tall is your husband? How tall is David?
About 6'2". So
okay, so he's taller than David.
Yeah.
And David's tall.
Yeah.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, in high school, he excelled in all the sports that he loved, but he particularly rose to high school athletic fame in water polo. He led his team to state champs, and he was so good that we have porn bots.
I just saw that too.
We're doing something right.
Let's see.
He led his team to state champs. He was so good that by the end of high school, he earned a full ride scholarship to play water polo at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, California.
Yes. I know people who went there, and I've been there a few times.
I was going to say, isn't that close to like your fam?
Stockton's still a way away, but it's actually not as far from, I went to UC Davis.
Oh, okay.
So it's not too far.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
All right. Well, he starts college in the fall of 1992, and he was majoring in English with a focus on creative writing.
Okay, makes sense.
I love that stuff. He, of course, slayed at water polo. He scored 100 goals in his college career.
No way.
Which was like
water polo is tough sport.
Right.
It's not for the faint of heart.
So, like, being so amazing at it, wouldn't you know, after he graduated college in 1996, he got the call. He was selected to the United States Olympic water polo team for the games that were happening that summer in Atlanta, 1996.
Okay.
Yeah, so he moves to Los Angeles to start training with the Olympic team.
Okay.
Pretty amazing, like living the dream. But sadly, while he was prepping for the Olympic Games, Ray and his coach had some sort of friction or falling out.
Oh, no.
And he got cut from the team 2 weeks before the Olympics.
Oh, no.
Totally, like, unlike him, people, like, his friends and family, anyone will tell you, like, that became, like, the biggest regret of his life. Like, it was just something that just crushed his dream of being on the team. Like, he made it to the Olympic team, and like an argument with his coach ended it all.
I know. I want to know what happened there, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, trying to think of the circumstances. You know, how could that personal argument end up? You know.
The only thing I can think is like they already didn't like each other or something like that, and it's so weird, like, to hear of somebody so well liked and to not be able to just like put that behind you for the team or the Olympics or whatever. But
like, with absolutely no information, Emily Thatcher said the coach did it.
So now Ray, he's still living in Los Angeles. So he focuses on his Hollywood aspirations and wants to become a screenwriter.
Okay, great.
With his English major and loving movies so much, but he has to pay the bills, obviously. So he gets a job coaching water polo and teaching Spanish at John Burroughs High School in Burbank.
Okay.
His students all love him. They all will tell you he was the greatest coach ever. He really listened to us and understood us, and he was just the greatest. He also got a job working part-time in the admissions office at LA Film School, which is, if you're going up over the hill from Burbank to
Right.
Hollywood, it's that big square building.
Yeah.
And since he worked there, he could also sit in on any classes he wanted. So he was sitting in on all the screenwriting classes that he could for
That's
free.
awesome. What? Oh, that's the way to do it.
While he was working on his first feature screenplay called Virtuoso, which was a surreal horror story about a Puerto Rican piano player.
Ooh.
I tried to find the script. I really wanted to read his scripts.
I'm interested.
I heard one breakdown that said basically like this guy was a professional pianist. He would play like restaurant gigs and stuff, and he had a manager. And then like he started like at every gig he played, like someone ended up murdered. And he had to figure out who it was, and then it ended up being his manager. Spoiler alert, but was killing everybody.
Wow.
But
I want to watch that.
So he starts shopping the script around, and there's an indie production company that's actually like into making it, and they start storyboarding it and everything, but they need some money. Like, how are we gonna? You can't make a movie without money.
It's true.
Surprise. So he's been working for 3 or 4 years in Burbank on that kind of stuff. And in the year 2000, on a night out with his friends, he's introduced to Allison Jones. Allison was a former athlete who played volleyball, basketball, and soccer in high school, where she grew up in Colorado. And she actually went to UCLA for a degree in accounting and business. So she had recently graduated from UCLA, and they met, and it was love at first sight. They were both just like tall, fit, super smart, into writing, and they like immediately connected and were basically inseparable. So fast forward, that they're living together now in LA 4 years later in 2004.
All right.
They get engaged.
Aw.
And they're looking forward to starting their life together. They want to buy a house and start a family, but as you know, in LA, it's
very difficult.
It's not easy, especially if you're an aspiring screenwriter. And
Yes.
she was working as an accountant for Sexy Hair products.
Oh, yeah. Big sexy hair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she was working with them, and but still, like, they wanted some way to be able to really start their life. They needed some sort of financial kick, and that's when an old friend of Ray's reaches out and says, "Hey, man, if you want to come out here, I can get you a job. I got a job for you." And this friend's name was Porter Stansbury.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, Ray and Porter actually grew up together.
I was going to
they were
ask.
Childhood friends. They played water polo. Porter was the goalie on his high school water polo team.
An athlete too. Okay.
Yeah, they went to prom together. Not together, but like double dated.
Yeah.
And
As buds.
buddies. And the friends that grew up in their circle described Porter's relationship with Ray growing up as like Porter always idolized Ray. Like Ray was always the center of attention anytime he walked in a room, and he just wanted to always be around Ray because he just totally.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell just by his picture. Like, he walks in and like lights up the room. You can tell.
Sure.
Right away.
Yeah. So he tells Ray, he's like, "Come on out. I got this project, a writing project that'll take like 3 months.
Okay.
You can make a bunch of money, and I'll send you back home with it, and you guys can, start your life together." And so Ray's like, what is this project? And Porter's like, "Well, you're writing financial advice." And Ray's like, "I don't know anything about financial, like investing, anything like that." And Porter's like, "Don't worry about it, man. Come on out here. Let's do this thing.
You don't have to know anything for this job.
You're a good writer, right?" And he's like, "Yeah."
I was going to say, like, is he actually creating the advice, or is somebody like giving him, "Here's what you're going to write about. You write it."
Right.
That's what I would, maybe. I don't know.
So he's like, "All right. What did he say? 30 days? I think I said 90 days or 3 months or something like that. But so at first he's like, it's a 30-day thing. Come on out. We'll tackle this project, and then I'll send you home with a bunch of cash.
Right.
And Ray talks about it with Allison, and she's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So Ray moves to Baltimore and starts the project, and it's tough on Ray and Allison because they've never like done the long distance thing.
Not easy.
And this was before like FaceTime and all the easier ways it technology has made long distance relationships. So they were feeling the strain on that, and Ray, as soon as he gets there, he feels like totally out of water. Like all he realizes once he gets there, like a lot of the people on Porter's staff are kids they grew up together. Like he's basically created this little fraternity of his buddies, like to make money. And Ray was just like,
so did Ray knew all those people too, or they were just friends of Porter?
He knew a bunch of them. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're all like, yeah, you convinced Ray to move out here. And Ray's like, I didn't move out here. I'm just doing a thing. And Porter's like, yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yikes.
So the 30-day project. You can check
out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Well, yeah. It becomes like a 90-day project.
Right.
And Allison's like, what's going on here? And Ray's like, I don't know. I thought we were almost done, but I guess like there's more work to do. And Porter's just trying to like, what's the word? Like the Borg assimilate
yeah.
Ray into his Porter Stansberry research company. You will come with me.
Yikes.
And like to the point where when they finally completed this project 3 months after he moved out there, Porter offers Ray his own newsletter. Hey, buddy, guess what? I'm going to give you your own subsidiary of Stansberry Research. Ooh. And this is at the same time, this is in 2004. This is when like Pirate Investments is still in the legal battle with the SEC. So it's like, it looks really bad over there, but don't look over there. Just like check out what's going on over here. It's awesome. So Ray talks to Allison about starting this new company where he would write his own newsletter. And Allison's like, all right, I'll move out there. Like with her job, she could travel. She could be wherever.
So she wasn't set on being in California. Right.
So she was like, I'll come out there, but you gotta promise me something. Like we're not spending more than 2 years out there. We're coming back to LA and starting our family no matter what happens 2 years from now.
Okay.
And Ray's like, absolutely, 100%. I am on board with that. 2 years. Got it.
Okay.
So Allison moves out and she's like, okay, this isn't so bad. Ray has actually been he made a good amount of money on that first 90-day project, and they actually bought a 4-bedroom townhouse.
Okay.
As soon as she moved out there.
Great.
I guess he had enough to afford that, and they planned on selling it 2 years later when they moved back to
investment
LA.
Properties and
Yes. So they get their own 4-bedroom home, and Allison's like, when she moved out there, she's like, Ray was a totally different person than when he had left. Like you could tell the grind was really like getting to him.
Yeah.
And you can imagine when you're being paid for something, like I still feel like an imposter at my job, and I've been doing it for three years.
I feel that.
But like, imagine this like creative guy who's just like knows nothing about money, and now people are giving him money for financial advice, and he has to just keep churning it out every week. Like, I can imagine the kind of turmoil he'd be going through.
That's a lot of pressure too. Like just being in charge, you're not even in charge of somebody else's money, but like giving the advice that somebody's going to take and use their money for. It's a lot of responsibility, even though you're not telling them, yes, do it. You're not doing it yourself, but still you have that feeling of being responsible. You got to do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he, the stress of that and being like the odd man out at work, just not feeling the same way everyone else was. Allison, she was like, all right, let's let's find some ways we can like spruce up our life here. And so they
Right.
joined a local church
Okay.
and started getting really involved there.
Yeah, make
And
some
then
community.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he actually started coaching some high school water polo out there after she moved out. And so that really helped. And so things were getting better. And he was working on his screenplay, a new screenplay about a Latin water polo player who made it to the Olympics called Midnight Polo.
Oh.
Which I can't help but think is his like
Right.
alternate universe autobiographical hero story.
Definitely.
And so like he's working on that. He's like things are turning around. He's getting better. But he was still the outcast at work.
Right.
He noted like after work, everyone just wanted to go drink martinis and pat each other on the back about how much money they're making. And all he wanted to do was work on his screenplay and hang out on the couch with his wife or his fiance. So he was also always like turning down invitations, and people just kind of looked at him sideways like, what's wrong, dude?
Right.
And you can imagine, like I showed you the people who worked for Porter now,
Yes.
17 years ago, how diverse was that staff
Right.
then? It's just like, what's wrong with Ray, man? Why doesn't he want to be one of us?
Yeah, for sure that was happening.
So it all just really started to wear down on Ray, where he was just like, I can't do this for 2 years, actually.
Right.
So he pulls Porter aside and he has a heart to heart with his good buddy, lifetime pal. And he says, you know what, man, this isn't working out. I can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So Porter's like, oh, okay. Well, let's brainstorm. What is something that could work? And Ray's like, I don't know. I think I'm probably going home. And Porter's like, no, I got an idea. How about this? How about you love making movies. You start a video production company and we'll hire you for all the Agora promotional stuff, anything any Agora subsidiaries need production wise. How about that? And Ray's like, okay.
Yeah,
I like
can
that
see
idea.
that working.
He's like, you can still make a bunch of money doing what you like to do. And then, after the 2 years, you go home. And Ray's like, okay, let's do that. So Ray starts his own production company. And in order to do so, he takes out a $15,000 credit card advance on Allison's credit card. I mean, they agreed on it together.
Yeah. That's still a lot. Like,
yeah.
Yikes.
To get all the gear needed for it.
Yeah.
But he does it. He starts his own little production company. He turns one of his bedrooms into a studio, and he's making promos for the Agora, and they're making money. And on November 5th of 2005, Allison and Ray got married in Puerto Rico. It was a beautiful day, according to family and friends. His mother actually surprised them by getting the most famous Puerto Rican cuatro player to play at the wedding. And everything was magical, including Porter Stansberry's arrival by private helicopter, stepping off the helicopter with a cigar hanging out of his mouth, looking like Tom Cruise.
Did he really? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if that was just, a little hyperbole for flavor, but
no.
gosh.
Some people actually said like it was really in bad taste.
Wow, yeah.
It's like showing up to like a lady showing up to the wedding in a wedding
Right,
dress.
yeah.
What are you doing, bro? It's Ray's day.
Yeah.
But, like, he lands his private helicopter just like right next to where the wedding's happening, and steps out and it flies away. And
Wow.
Porter's here.
I'll bet you that's some like
Power move.
Well, yeah, because in childhood he was always looking up to Ray, and now he feels like he's the one that Ray should be looking up to. Just my
Absolutely,
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. He used to idolize Ray, and now he's able to like give Ray a job.
right.
I can help you get money.
Yeah.
Oh, let me show up at your wedding. Like,
Yeah, that's.
Yes. So, about 4 months later, Ray and Allison are getting ready. Like, they're making their plans. They're gonna leave. They're probably that summer. They're gonna head back to LA.
Okay.
And in March, Ray goes down to Florida to film one of the Agora's conferences.
Okay.
And it was his last big project that he was going to do before they moved. Basically, there was a conference, and a lot of subscribers that couldn't make it paid money for a DVD of it. And so Ray was going down to record it, and he would edit together and mail it out.
No live streams back then.
Nope. Just bootleg DVDs of the conference. Doesn't that sound exciting?
Oh, yeah. Sounds like a good weekend.
Absolutely. Not.
Yeah.
In April of 2006, they put their house up for sale and like started packing, getting ready to head home. He had finished Midnight Polo.
Okay.
He had his own production company now, so he could continue work in LA. All he had to do was finish up that last project that he'd been working on, and he was close to being done, almost done.
Okay.
A lot of pressure, though, still with everything that's going on, and Allison starts to notice Ray becoming a little bit more protective of her. He was always very doting and attentive, but he started going with her everywhere he could, anytime he could. Even when she would go running, she used to go running every day on this track, and he would just say, bye, see you later. But he started coming with her
Oh,
to
that's
sit in the
interesting.
stands and read.
Oh, so not even like, oh, I'm going to start working out with you. He was just hanging out.
Yeah, just wanted to be there with her wherever she was. And she remembered one time in particular, it was raining, so Ray was in the car, and she was still running on the track. And there was a man that came out of kind of nowhere and started to approach her. And as soon as Ray saw that, he was out the door of the car running toward this man. And the man just turned around and left. And Allison was like, what was that? And
Yeah.
Ray was like, I don't know. I just got a weird vibe from that guy. And she was like,
interesting.
okay.
I know, because it's hard, because on the one hand, it could have just been somebody who was like, hey, how do you get to the local store? Like, I'm not from here. But
and then the 6'5" dude comes booking at you, and you're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah, nope. I don't
even know that bad.
No. But on the other hand, it could have been something more serious. Wow. And I was kind of wondering, before you said that, I was wondering if he was always around her because, basically, of her, like trying to protect her, or was he always around her because of something that was going on with him and he didn't want to be alone? I don't know.
We shall explore further.
Okay.
Come the night of May 15th, 2006, 1 o'clock in the morning, their home alarm goes off. Allison wakes up. Ray wasn't sleeping next to her. He used to play video games late into the night, so that wasn't weird.
Okay.
But so she comes out into the hall, and he comes out of his studio with a baseball bat and just looking scared out of his mind. She said she'd never seen him look like that, and it was just more shocking to her to see him so afraid than it was to actually wake up to that alarm. And the alarm had never gone off in their house as long as they'd lived there.
She got the chills too. Ugh.
Yeah. So he goes around, checks around the townhouse. Nobody's there. They call the police. The police come out, check around. They find like one of the screens on the bottom floor had been like peeled back a little bit, and that's probably what set the alarm off. And the police are probably like, the police said it was probably like squirrels or something.
I was gonna say they're gonna blame an animal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking a cat.
Could be.
Yeah.
And Allison's like, no, squirrels. We've never had squirrels around here. This is not squirrels. And the police were like, I don't know what to do. They didn't have like Ring cameras back then, so they reset the alarm and went back to bed. The following night, Tuesday, May 16th, around 1 o'clock in the morning, it happens again. The same exact thing. Ray comes out with a bat, like looking like he's ready to slaughter nation. They look around, can't find anything. This time they don't call the cops. They're just like, this is really weird. And Allison's like, I can't deal with this, and I have to go to bed because she was leaving in a few hours. She had a business trip. She was driving to Richmond, Virginia, for a few days for business. So they go back to bed. In the morning, they have breakfast together.
Okay.
Ray carries her suitcase to her car, kisses her goodbye. She drives away, having no idea that was the last time she would see him. So Sorry, I just like froze my brain.
I have definitely had that happen before.
Yes. So she drives to Richmond, does her business stuff, and it's worth mentioning at this point that Allison had a co-worker for sexy hair named Claudia that worked out of NYC, New York City, that had been staying with them for like a week. And Claudia was still there at the house. They had 4 bedrooms when Allison left. And Claudia, the bedroom that Claudia was staying in is actually shares a wall, is right next to Ray's studio.
Okay.
So based on Claudia's accounts of what happened that day, Tuesday, May 16th, it was like a normal day. Ray spent the day working on finishing up this project. It was a huge project. This was a Tuesday and it was due the following Wednesday.
Okay.
And so he's getting ready toward the end of it. And he actually that day booked an editing suite for the following Monday. I'm just totally just guessing as someone who's had this before, but like I imagine he planned to finish it over the weekend and then book this editing suite to duplicate all the DVDs.
Right. Makes sense.
And the guy who talked to him on the phone that day when he booked the editing suite said he sounded totally normal. They've had the same conversation a million times before. Just seemed like maybe he was a little stressed out because the deadline was coming up.
Right. Which
He
is normal.
He sounded fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So over in Virginia, after Allison was done with all of her work stuff for the day, she got back to her hotel room about 6:30 and called Ray. He didn't pick up. So she left a voicemail. She's like, I'm done for the day. I'm in my room. Just give me a call whenever you come in. And he doesn't call.
Right. Okay.
So a few hours go by and she's getting ready for bed. And this is totally not like him, but she figured maybe he's out with his friends and he'll call me back. And so she calls him again before she goes to bed, and it rings and rings and rings, goes to voicemail.
I would be so panicked.
Right. So she thinks, hey, I'll call Claudia. Ask her about Ray. And Claudia answers and she says, yeah, he was here most of the day. About 4 p.m., I heard him go down in the kitchen for a snack. He got like some chips and a drink, and then his cell phone rang in his office. So he came back upstairs. He answered the phone. He said, hello. And the person on the other end of the phone said something. And he said, oh, shit. And he ran out of the room and ran out of the house wearing exactly what he was wearing at the time, flip-flops, shorts, and a hoodie. And she heard him come back in a few minutes later, and he was in for like a minute, and then he left again.
Ooh.
And that was the last she heard him in the house. And so Allison's like, okay, well, if he comes back and I haven't heard from him, can you give me a call? And Claudia's like, yeah, sure. So Allison goes to bed and wakes up at 5:30 in the morning to Claudia saying he didn't come home. So Allison's like, oh my God. So she tries calling him again. Rings, goes to voicemail. And she's like, he must have gone out drinking with the guys and just forgot to call me, which is super weird and not like him at all.
But you got to believe something, right? Because, yeah.
So she lays back down, tries to go back to sleep, and then she's just like, no, I can't. No. I got to go. Like, she had like several days more of business to do, but she just packed up and headed back home.
Yeah.
While she's driving home, she's calling him, and then like halfway home, the ringing stopped and it went straight to voicemail, which meant either someone turned off his phone or the battery died.
Or died, yeah.
And so she's calling family, friends. Has anybody heard from him in the past couple of days? And no one, not his parents, not his friends, no one has heard from him. So she gets home and his Mitsubishi Montero is not in the driveway. She goes in and Claudia had left everything like untouched. All the lights were still on that he left. Like his bag of chips was there, his drink that he opened, his Invisaligns were on the table. And Allison says, as his wife, she's like, if he left his Invisaligns there, like he was planning on being right back.
Right.
Like she just knows, like he wouldn't just
Yeah, if
leave
you're
there
packing
or
up for the
something.
night, or yeah, if you leave, I mean, I guess you would leave your food. Maybe I wouldn't, because it'd be like, oh, some ants, like you think there would have been things, or like, oh, I'm gonna finish this before I leave because I don't know what I'm gonna eat. Or yeah, but yeah, definitely Invisaligns. If there's medication.
Yes.
Yikes.
And um, so that day, Ray's parents and Allison's parents, like this is so out of character that very day, like they booked flights to come out there and see what's going on, like
Right.
because this is just so not right. Allison calls the police. She files a missing persons report at 3 p.m. that afternoon, and they start calling hospitals, other police departments. They're calling everywhere. As quickly as they can. They put up missing persons posters, and they started driving around doing patrols. Porter Stansberry, who his group of employees was actually at a retreat on the East Coast, flew home to help with the search, and he put up $1,000 of his own money for a reward. And they just plastered the neighborhood with these missing persons posters.
And so Porter and all of them have an alibi.
They were all out of
They're
town.
all out of town.
At least that group
Yeah.
of his people were. So his phone being off, they have no way to like try and track it. And I think it was probably before like pinging. I don't even know if they had it back 17 years ago.
I feel like they did. It might not have been as easy. I think now it's obviously a little better. Like you can even just like turn on my location,
Yeah. And one thing you check when somebody goes missing, are they spending money? They check out his bank accounts. He's not spending any money, like nothing.
And so nobody stole his credit cards,
Exactly. Yes. So they search and they search and they search and they search. And like everyone, it's just like worried, sick. Like imagine like everyone just keeps saying how out of character it is. Like the police are like, he'll turn up. And everybody's like, no, you don't understand. Like imagine, like I can imagine like if Jamie went missing.
Right.
And people are like, oh, her phone probably just turned off. She'll call you back. And I'm like,
no,
you don't no, you don't get it. Like, and I can't imagine how I would feel not knowing where she was and knowing that it wasn't right.
And that's the same thing like in my story when they're all like, oh, she's a teenager, she'll turn up, it's fine. They're like, no, you don't know her. Like it's the same thing. They just assume.
So 6 days go by. The 22nd of May, Allison's parents decide, like, we've tried everything. Let's try something new. Let's go let's just search every parking lot in Baltimore and just try and find the car. So they start driving around, and on that day, the 6th day after he went missing, they found the car. The car was in a parking lot off of a street called St. Paul Street in the Mount Vernon neighborhood.
Okay.
So they call the police and they call Allison, and everybody just jets over there, and the media comes out there too. The first thing they notice on the windshield is a parking ticket from the parking lot, and it's dated the 17th.
Okay, so it's been there a while.
Yeah, he went missing on the 16th, or the day he ran out of his house was the 16th. And so they talked to the parking attendant, who's the same guy that works there every day.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, so it has that ticket because it wasn't there when I left work at 6 p.m.
Ooh.
And it was there when I came in to work the next day at 8 a.m.
Okay.
So at some point between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. the next morning, it showed up there.
And what time? I just can't remember. What time did you say he got the phone call and left?
Around 4.
In the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay. Just make sure it wasn't like a 4 a.m. call. I can't remember.
No, 4 p.m.
Okay, 4 p.m. But he didn't get there till after 6.
Correct. And so the police process the car, can't find anything worth noting, no foul play, no signs that the car was stolen, nothing significant.
No damage.
No damage. And like the spouses will always know better than the police, so they say go ahead and take a look, and Allison looks at it and she can't find anything out of place, out of sorts. There's nothing in it, no wallet or phone in there. So they're just kind of like, all right, well, we found the car at least in this neighborhood. And I'll show you exactly where they found it. It happened to be in this parking lot here, which is right next to the Belvedere Hotel.
Oh.
And I failed to mention this earlier, but what else is across the street from the Belvedere Hotel but Stansbury Research? So this is where Ray would come sometimes to meet with people. They'd meet at the Owl Bar, and he and Allison had been to dinner once at the 13th floor, but he was nervous the whole time because he's afraid of heights. He didn't like it up there, so he didn't like going up there. So she's assuming that he came to meet somebody at the Owl Bar and just happened to go missing. But now that they found the car there, they know to look there. And police ask everybody at the Belvedere, everyone that worked at the Owl Bar, have you seen this man? And they've been seeing the missing posters all week, and they're like, no, we never saw him come in here that day, and not recently. So they're kind of like drawing blanks, even though they found the car. And 2 days after they found the car, 3 of his friends from Stansbury, they're on a lunch break, and they say, this is kind of weird to me, but they say, let's spend our lunch break just looking for clues for Ray, because, maybe we'll spot something that the police haven't seen or whatever. So they wind up.
Yeah, that is. On one hand, I can see it. Like, yeah, okay, you want to take it, 'cause you'd imagine that they're friends at this point. But on the other hand, it is weird. It's like Hardy Boys style, like.
Yeah.
Let's go solve a mystery,
And I could see, like, if they really cared about him, like, oh my God, like, I'm going to do everything I can to help find him, even if it's just walking around on my lunch break.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, he kept saying how he felt outcast, like the odd man out. How close of friends were they?
Right. So they end up on this lunch break on the top level of the parking structure. And they happen to look down, and ladies and gentlemen, this is live on Google Maps, and it's still there. They're looking down from the parking structure. There's where the connecting mall is. There's skylights here. Down in this area, it used to be the hotel pool and stuff. Now it's just offices. And they find what looks like a hole. There's a hole in the roof.
Oh.
And producer Craig, if he has that, might be able to share a closer picture, not a Google map, but what the hole looked like when they discovered it. Oh, I have to stop sharing.
I was going to say, yeah, you stop sharing, Craig shares.
There we are. He can show you what it looked like the day that they found it.
Oh, that is on Google Maps. I thought it was just something dark.
No, it's a hole in the roof. And it's about they say it was bigger than a Frisbee, but smaller than a hula hoop.
Okay.
And they're looking at it, and they're like, that's weird. And then one of them goes, what's that? And points, and they see a flip-flop near the hole. And they're like, okay, this is weird. Let's call the cops. So they call the police. The police tell them, wait in the lobby. They rush over, and they contact the building manager, a guy named Gary Shivers.
Okay.
He was a portly older black guy. He was happy to help. I imagine him like Carl Winslow from
Family Matters.
Family Matters. Yeah, he's like, hey guys, yeah, I'll help you. So he leads him up, and he's telling him as he's walking up the stairs, he's like, yeah, that area by the skylights, it used to be our pool and racquetball courts. Now it's like abandoned office space. And as he's saying that, he starts to think, actually, there's a catering company across the hall that's been complaining about a bad smell the past few days.
Oh,
They thought it was a dead rat in the wall. And he's like, he just gets a horrible feeling as he's opening the door. And then when he opens the door, he is just hit with the smell of decomposition, and it just like hits him in the back of the throat, and he sees Ray's badly decomposed already body there just a few feet inside the door, against a wall almost. And this sight, there's the outline and how it looked from when he opened the door. It was basically, this picture is taken from like the standpoint of the door. So as he opens it, he's just like right there. And poor Gary, like he'll never unsee that. He actually just goes nope, and he turns around and he walks out of the hotel. He walks like 2 blocks to this hairdresser where his like sister worked, and she's like, "What's wrong?" And he's just like, "I need booze." And she happened to have like a bottle of booze with her at work, and he took like 3 or 4 shots of whatever it was, and he was just like, I will never unsee that. And now poor guy, like he says to this day, anytime he unlocks and opens a door, he sees it and he smells it, and it's just it's
traumatizing.
Awful.
I can't even imagine.
Absolutely. So they found him. The police, his body's there. It's crumpled in a fetal position. It's close to the wall, under the hole. He's barefoot, wearing the shorts and hoodie that he left the house in. But Amanda, I sent you the autopsy report, the list of his injuries. I mean, you don't have to like milk it, but if you could just like read what his injuries were.
And before that, really quick, I just wanted to check again. This little room, what was it for? Like, why had nobody been in there for so long?
It was converted into office space. They used to have like a church worship group that met in there, but they had stopped a few months earlier.
Okay.
But originally it was the hotel pool and racquetball court.
Right. But at this time it was like an office space, just wasn't being used?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess they weren't having it like regularly cleaned or whatever.
No.
It's just interesting. You would think that somebody, like security would be going through areas.
Some sort of patrol would be going through your hotel.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's because it was like part of that mid section between the hotel and the parking garage. Like maybe just what didn't have a regular security patrol.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder, however, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
All right. So the autopsy says multiple injuries. So A is head and neck injuries, abrasion and laceration of the forehead, fractures of the maxilla, zygomatic bones, and mandible, avulsion of the mandibular teeth, multiple skull fractures, multiple base of skull fractures, subgaleal hemorrhage, I'm looking at this one going, oh no, subarachnoid hemorrhage, hemorrhage of anterior neck muscles. So I was just in his head. Torso injuries, contusion of the chest, abrasion of the torso, bilateral clavicle fractures, fracture of the sternum, multiple rib fractures, laceration of the pulmonary trunk, atrial septum, left and right ventricles of the heart, bilateral lung contusions, lacerations of the lung, lacerations of the liver, laceration of the right groin, fractures of the right pelvis, hemorrhage of the right testicle. And then extreme injuries, extremity injuries. Got it.
Extremities.
I was like, extreme? What were the rest?
Those weren't that bad.
Extremity injuries, abrasions of the upper and lower extremities, lacerations of the lower extremities, fracture of the right tibia and fibia. Wow.
All kind of what you would expect if somebody fell a long ways and landed through a roof.
For the most part, yeah. I would like to see like an actual picture of where everything is located. Because I'm kind of wondering, like, what if his skull fractures were back here, but his teeth were here? Are they all consistent? Which maybe they were.
Yeah, there actually is a
like a diagram, not a picture.
There is a diagram.
Yes.
Yeah, I can show that to you. Here we go. Let me see if I can blow it up. Yeah, but I mean, basically, all 24 of his ribs are broken. Teeth knocked out.
Oh god.
He's a crumpled mess.
Yeah.
Let's see.
How far is the roof? Like, how far would he have fallen?
So the roof that he fell through was like the 3rd floor of that mall, and the hotel itself is like 13 floors. But
But if it was like 3 floors, then I mean that's.
No, he went through the roof and landed on the floor. Yeah, so it was like 10 stories basically.
Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
So that
and
was.
We'll go through that in a minute. Sorry, I can't pull this up.
No, it's okay. And now that I realized just how far he probably fell, it would probably be hard to check for consistency.
I'll just share this, and then because I think it's interesting to see, like, he's got this is the leg that's broken and the worst, but then this one has fractures in that bone too.
Right. Oh.
But like, his skull is crushed.
Oh, look at those fractures. Wow.
Horrible.
And his lungs, it's interesting. His lungs, like, I'm not on camera. His lungs made like a V or shape. If those red lines were injuries, they just made like almost a perfect V on both sides. Like it.
They said his lungs and his liver were crushed by the ribs.
Right.
So now the really weird discoveries start happening. So that the police go up to the roof and they find the sandals that the friends had seen. They also find his keys, his sunglasses, and his cell phone, all kind of placed around the hole. And while there's some damage to his sandals, like one of his flip-flops has drag marks on the toe and the other one snapped out. It's like the Y thing that goes through your toe, and it snapped out from the bottom of the base.
Right.
So his flip-flops are damaged, but surprisingly, his sunglasses and his phone are unscratched. I can't drop my phone from 3 feet.
Right, without breaking it.
Without damage. And granted, these aren't iPhones.
I was going to say, now these phones were hardier back then. Was it a flip phone?
But there wasn't a cracked screen. There were no scratches on it. And like no scratches on your sunglasses.
No.
And they're all interestingly placed around.
I was just going to say, where were they?
Well, so people there's actually an author named Makita Brotman who wrote a very extensive and thorough book on this whole situation. She's a scholar and an author, and she was living in the Belvedere Hotel at the time, and she watched it all happen, and she put this book together and put it out a couple years ago. It's amazing. But she was watching the officers as like from her window as they were discovering these things around the hole, and they were just picking them up and throwing them to each other. Like there was no gloves, putting things in bags. It was just like this guy fell off the roof and he dropped these things along the way, I guess. So let's just collect them.
So many cases are just ruined by bad police work. Like it's a common thread when you start watching these mystery shows, you know, these stories, and you just hear this irresponsible work and you're like, we could have known so much more. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like I know there are lots of cases where that doesn't happen, but just especially on these cases where it's just frustrating.
Yep. And actually in the pockets of his shorts were his ID, his credit card, and this souvenir penny that Allison had got him on a business trip that he usually left in his bedstand. It was like a penny with like a heart carved out in the middle.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was odd to Allison. He had it in his pocket at the time.
Yeah, for some reason he just
and
decided
the biggest
to pick it
thing
up.
She was shocked about was that she couldn't find his money clip. She had given him an antique money clip with his initials carved in it when they got married, and he took it with him everywhere. And when she didn't find it in the car, she assumed it was still on him, and it was not in his pockets. And so that was very strange to Allison as well.
Yeah.
Another strange thing that happened pretty much right away, as soon as they found Ray's body, Porter Stansberry called all of the employees together, and with the company lawyers. The Agora sent a ton of lawyers over to talk about this, and they instructed every employee, you are not to speak to the police. If the police ask you about this, do not answer any questions without a lawyer present.
Okay. Well, I mean, without a lawyer present, that part, I don't think it's right. But I mean, like, I can see a lot of businesses, we got to protect ourselves, especially if you have a lot of money,
Yes.
I see that as, I mean, it's suspicious, but like, I see that as a common thing.
Yeah. Well, as they would say, after this happened, Allison asked Porter, like, what's going on here? Why won't you guys talk to the cops? And Porter was just like, we can't help you. I'm sorry. And he just totally turned his back on Allison, and that was the end of their relationship. And they had been like, never talked again. And Allison's just like, okay, that's really weird. What's going on here? Yeah. So the cops start to look at this, and they're like, okay, well, we can put this to bed right away. Let's take a look at the security footage. So there's a ton of security cameras on the outside of the Belvedere Hotel. Guess what? None of them were working that day.
Not
None
one?
of them were on. Not a single one.
Were they broken or just turned off?
They were functioning video cameras that were not working that day. They were turned off.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. That's what I was like. Was it like there was a power outage? Yeah. Did somebody choose to turn them off?
The police take all of the footage from inside video cameras and take them to the station to take a look at them. Okay. And what they end up telling Allison is that they scoured the footage, and there is no footage of Ray entering the hotel that day. In any elevators, in any hallways, staircases, there's no footage of Ray. And of course, later on, she just wanted to confirm it. So after the police were done with the tapes, like, she went to the hotel and asked to see the tapes, and the hotel gave her the tapes. And they went up to the day of the 16th and then started after the 17th. So the day that Allison wanted to see, the day that Ray went missing, that footage was completely gone by the time the police were done with the tapes.
Okay.
A little sus.
Yeah, that's...
And so they're talking to all of the hotel staff, the staff of the 13th floor, this Bell staff. Everyone's just like, we never saw this guy come in that day. So obviously with everything, I mean, Baltimore's a little bit busy as far as crime goes.
Right.
And so the PD is already bogged down.
Yeah.
And there are no leads that they can find. They actually found, when they looked at his computer screen, that the last thing he was looking at on his computer before he left was a time of the sunset that night. So the police are just like, listen, he probably went up to the roof to watch the sunset and then take his own life. Like, that's what makes the most sense right here. All of the detectives said that, and so, except for one by the name of Michael Bayer. He was just like, none of this adds up, you guys. Like, why? His biggest thing was the placed items around the hole, and this hole seemed too small for him, for someone who had fallen that far.
That's what I was thinking when you said it was like the size of a frisbee.
Bigger than a frisbee, smaller than a hula hoop.
Right. Like, that does seem...
Yeah. So Michael Bayer's the one detective who's still looking at it. Now, let's just talk about the jump for a couple of minutes. I know, like, it's been a long night, but I feel like the people who are still here are still
They're
here.
invested.
Let's look back at the Google Maps and how this would work. So there are a couple of ways he could have come off the roof, and one is from the very top, right? So if he came out, let me turn this. If he came out, this is the stairwell, and jumped from here all the way to that hole. The distance from the ledge of the building to that hole is 45 feet.
Well, and not only that, but it's an angle. Like,
right.
It's not straight down, like you just jump and you go straight down. How do you travel that far?
They did the math, and they said he would have to be traveling 11 miles per hour by the time he jumped to make it 45 feet to that hole.
What?
Which wouldn't be impossible. He was
yeah, he's an athlete.
He could run 11 miles per hour, but he was in flip-flops and shorts and a hoodie. Also, like, if he's coming down at that angle, who's to say he doesn't hit this like wall
right
on the way down? The hole is actually just a few feet away from that other wall, so he'd have to be coming like straight down.
Yeah.
And they look at the size of the hole, and they determine like he would have had to be doing like a pencil dive, basically.
Yeah.
From straight down to
but
make
see,
that small
that's
of a
why
hole.
I'm confused. Like, so you imagine him jumping, and then you'd have to be jumping basically at an angle, right? Because to get that far,
Right.
you can't jump and stay straight. You have to get yourself at an angle. So then you're at an angle and you somehow correct and pencil dive in. Like, how does that work? It just doesn't make sense.
And so then other people are like, look, there's this ledge here. He could come out of one of these windows and jump from there. That would have been a lot easier. But these are actually like condos that people own.
Uh-huh.
So he would have to have like known the homeowner to get into the house and go out the windows. And even then the building manager was saying half those windows work. Like none of them, like in order for him to access that ledge, a lot of planning would have to go into that. It couldn't just be like a sudden thing.
Right.
And then other people are like, what if he jumped off the roof of the parking garage? And that's only a 20-foot drop.
Yeah, would it have?
And it's 20 feet away. So it's basically like he would have been running and leapt and just done a cannonball. And even then, like the cops are like, that wouldn't kill him. He'd just be injured. This guy, he'd just be injured from that. Right. So the jump doesn't make sense. The hole doesn't make sense. Like the way that his property is just laid around the hole. Yeah. It makes no sense.
And then the other thing that comes to mind is like the noise factor. Like, wouldn't somebody have heard this if he was traveling that fast and that far? It would have been loud when he hit that.
There is one person, and I've mentioned her. She wrote the book on this, literally. Makita Brotman says in her book that she and her husband were laying in bed reading the night that Ray went missing, and they heard a loud crash outside, and it shook the walls and window.
Okay.
And they assumed it was a car accident. And so they went out and looked, and there was nothing. And so they just went back to bed, and they didn't think about it again until like they discovered his body and discovered like the hole and everything. And then she went, oh yeah, remember we heard that crash? But they're the only people who have come forward saying they heard something. And obviously they're not the only people that live there.
Right.
So yeah. And I think like, I mean, if he didn't want to take his own life, if he was thrown off the roof or, he'd be screaming. Like you'd hear something other than just a crash. So it's all super sus.
It really is.
Okay, so let's talk about the phone call he got that day, the day he went missing. The police checked his records, and he had 5 calls to his cell phone that day, incoming calls before Allison, and they all came from a switchboard in the building of Stansbury Research. But the cops, there's no way to tell what number or what line the calls originated from. Right. They digitally go to like the switchboard, and the switchboard puts it out. So they know it came from that building, but they don't know what number it came from. 5 different calls, including the last one in which he went, hello? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Who called him?
And David asks, did any of the guys at Stansbury own or have access to one of the condos?
Oh, or a private helicopter. Yeah, helicopter is a theory that was looked into. Was he dropped from a helicopter at some point? And like something about like the airspace laws and stuff. There's just
there's too much tracking that happens.
It's a good question about owning the condos, though. I do not have that information.
Yeah.
So really sus about the phone calls coming from Stansbury and medical examiner. So Allison goes to talk to that medical examiner for any like, do you have anything you can give me at this point? The medical examiner closes the door and she tells Allison, I know what the cops are trying to do. Do not let them call this a suicide. She said she looked at the report again and she said, I was looking at it again and his injuries look more consistent with being struck by a vehicle going at a high speed than fall from a high place. So she's like, I can't say he was struck by a vehicle because like I would look like I was cuckoo,
right?
Based on the circumstances,
yeah.
But I'm not going to call this a suicide. There are 5 different ways a medical examiner can determine a death to be. Can you name them?
Wait, so the causes of death, you mean? Like
the
yes. Like suicide?
Yes.
Homicide?
Yep.
Let's see. Like suicide, homicide. I mean, obviously I don't know what they would call it, but like natural causes.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, there's 2 that is there like, oh no. Is there something like a natural there's a generic one and I can't think of what it's called.
Accidental.
Okay, yeah, accidental. And then
the last way they could determine it is undetermined.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking accidental and undetermined would be like a similar, but
the medical examiner's like, I'm not going to call it a homicide. I'm not going to call it a suicide. I can't call it a homicide. We're going to file it as undetermined.
Right.
So that's what they do. Now, if it was a homicide, and I see people talking about it in the chat now, was he killed there on site? Right. Or, as I kind of thought, what it looks like Dave Hill is saying, was he killed somewhere else, snuck into the building by someone who knows the building and knows that area of the building is vacant, and they crashed a hole through the roof and staged it. Yeah. Maybe that's the crash that Makita Brotman heard. They had to create a hole in the roof. It clearly wasn't there before when the offices were being used. Were they able to throw something off one of the ledges to
throw
land,
like a bowling ball,
make a hole, and then stage his body there? Did he get hit by a car somewhere else and then planted there? That is, these are all things that people are trying to figure out. Right. So, Detective Michael Byer comes to Allison with some bad news. Guess what it is?
Oh no, I don't know.
Can you even guess? No. He's the one that believes it's not a suicide.
I don't know.
He's being reassigned.
Oh my God, no.
The police department decided he's too invested in this case, and they're going to put another investigator on it. So the one detective who doesn't believe it's suicide is taken off the case, and another's put on it that just doesn't see it as something that is a big priority right now.
Open and shut, suicide. End of story. Good job, everybody.
All right. I promise we're getting close to the end. But we're also kind of not because of how complex this is.
I mean, I feel like I keep going back to like, I don't think he was going to the Belvedere. Like, I think that he was parked there, but I don't think that was his destination. And I'm kind of wondering, I don't know if there was a way that they tell or if anybody knew, because he was searching for sunset times, obviously. And so I'm wondering if remember how he left and he came back, right? So what I'm wondering is, did he come back in really quick, search for the sunset time, leave? because he was supposed to meet somebody like at sunset.
That's a
Right.
good question.
So I wonder what time he Googled that. And then I'm thinking, okay, the work called. So he, and the Stansbury office is right there. So it makes sense to use the same parking lot. They could have been meeting for something. Meet me in the parking lot.
They did say they used to have work meetings in the L bar.
Yeah.
often. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't,
So-
maybe he didn't want to go in because, heights, elevators, blah, blah,
I was
blah.
also thinking maybe they were waiting for him in the parking lot and they were just like, yo, once he was there, they put him in another car or something.
Yeah.
Like,
Or they ran him over,
well, you brought up a good point about him coming back. What was that moment when he came back? And I've been thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
One thought I had was he getting that penny as like a good luck charm? Like, did he know he was in some sort of trouble? Was this some sort of message to Allison? Like, if you find this in my pocket, like, I was thinking about you, kind of a thing. Another thing is, like, was he coming back to leave something, or this is what some people think he came back to leave. As Allison was searching the apartment, of course, like, she's looking for any answers in the weeks after this has happened. She's searching. She happens to look at the back of his iMac computer, and taped to the back of his computer is this note that is folded up, wrapped in plastic, and taped. And it is folded up so small, it is like 2 inches by 1 inch folded. I think Craig has there you go. That's how small it was, folded up next to a ruler. And unfolded, it looks like this. The words, it's like several paragraphs of text, and the words are so small. There's a spoiler for you. Attention. The words are so small that, like, no printers at the time could print that small. So this was something that he had, like, shrunk down in a Xerox machine. He had put together and shrunk it down so it would fit.
Right.
And since we already showed it, like, one of the big Reddit threads kind of broke it down and said, hey, look what this looks like. This was after America's Most Wanted came out. Someone on Reddit posted this. It says help. But this was not something that any police officers.
Right. It's a little far-fetched. I mean, I get it. I see what they're saying. But at the same time, it's like, it really is just following the folds of the paper.
But something to note is this was clearly an 8x10 sheet of paper that Ray ripped just the parts he needed, and then folded up, and then wrapped in plastic and taped to the back of his computer.
I wonder if there was more to it.
Well, the fact that those edges are gone makes Allison causes Allison to notice that those scraps of trash or those scraps of paper are in the trash on the top of his wastebasket. So he had those are the last things he had thrown away in his studio. All right. So was this a suicide note? What did this note say? Right. We're going to break it down. For this, we're going to bring in our very own producer, Craig Jackman, to interpret some of the letter. And then I'm going to kind of break down some in the middle, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. But Craig, go ahead and read the start of that letter.
Okay. Brothers and sisters, right now, around the world, volcanoes are erupting. What an awesome sight. Virtus junxit mors non separabit. Whom virtue unites, death will not separate. That was a well-played game. Congratulations to all who participated. I hope you enjoyed it, but it was time to wake up, so here I am. I'd like to welcome those who accepted our invitations for membership during the game. We couldn't have done it without you. I took on this endeavor to find the truth, but not for its own sake. In accepting this quest for the truth, I hoped to make myself, with the help of others, into a man worthy and ready to receive it. Members of the council, please note that I will lend careful concentration to the traditional responsibilities in light of these proceedings, and I will satisfy the standard request of this council with the appropriate time. Again, well done to all who participated. I expect the council has invited all the players who gave their lives to this pursuit back so they may join us here. Tom Hickling, Rayburn, Batchelder, Joan Tellini, Stanley Kubrick. Fare thee well, Rob Rosenberg. Now, before I continue with my instructions for the council and claim my prize for my service, I'd like to allow Porter Stansbury to claim his prize. Now, Porter, don't waste these words by claiming something I'd just take back.
That's the first section. The next section, it starts with, now that the game is finished, I expect the council to recuperate those who have given time and talent to this venture. Along with myself, those players should be made 5 years younger by the council. And he then lists a number of people in Ray's life. And these are all redacted from, what we got from the police, but they're names of his family, his co-workers, people he knew years ago and hadn't talked to, just this crazy list of names. And then he goes on to say, Porter Stansbury, if he didn't do it himself, brothers and sisters, attachments of these ideas. He lists these technological advances: radio frequency, flash drive, CD, VCD, DVD, Wi-Fi, internet, Ethernet, Bluetooth, and just it's Da Vinci surgical robot. And then there's more in speech form toward Porter Stansbury for further transactions. Visit me at all my properties. Now this is interesting. My primary residence in northern Argentina is the biggest mansion in Buenos Aires. Well done, Porter. In Europe, or my flat in Nice or Madrid. He starts listing these places where he owns properties, and then he wants to briefly mention some movies and books that inspired him: Matrix, Family Man, National Treasure, Da Vinci Code, Meet Joe Black. Notable in here is The Game, and that is a David Fincher movie that we'll talk about in a moment. But then specifically some M. Night Shyamalan movies that he loves. Those are those 5 that he loves. He also wants to single out Keith Richards. He had a good run, but what's mine is mine. The game is up. The deed's been done. It's time for some shut-eye. Lastly, he expects to see himself cast in a movie, and he's jealous that nobody really knows what that means there. But then Craig can close us out with the end of his note.
I expect that my service has helped those that have helped me, and I expect that the focus of what could again include Arcaria. So, let me leave you with a phrase that helps give meaning to the game. Human progress is our cause, liberty of thought our supreme wish, freedom of conscience our mission, and the guarantee of equal rights to all peoples everywhere the ultimate goal. Take care and enjoy the festivities.
Craig Jackman, ladies and gentlemen. Great interpretation. All right. So Allison finds this and doesn't know.
No, how do you make heads or tails? I don't.
So she contacts the police. She gives it to them. The police go, oh, yeah, we can't verify that this is a suicide note. The police give it to the FBI. The FBI say that, okay, this isn't a suicide note. It's got to be some sort of code. The FBI code breakers try to break it and they can't. So now Allison's like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. And I definitely feel like it has to be code, and especially because they mention Da Vinci Code and M. Night Shyamalan, and there's a lot of, I don't know. I just feel like there's definitely more there, and I just wish, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Well, Amanda, and anybody who's playing along at home, if you want to Google, right at the top of his speech in the note, he says, "Whom virtue unites, death will not separate." Allison thought that was really interesting, and so she plugged that into Google, and guess what she found?
Oh.
Are you Googling it too?
I did not, but I can. Let's see.
Anybody in the chat?
Let's see. It's whom virtue unites. Ah, Masons.
Freemasons. It's a Freemason, some sort of Freemason speech. And Allison recalls Ray was interested in Freemasons, and I know a lot of the guys that he worked with were in like a Freemason group. And Ray was interested in joining, but not for out there, for when he got back to LA, because he thought maybe they could help him with his career in Hollywood. So there are, as people were talking about aliens and Illuminati in the chat, there are connections to the Freemasons in this note. And as we already showed, somebody who, after they watched Unsolved Mysteries, said, "Look, it spells out help," which that's up to you to decide if you see that or not. But what's interesting to me is also the game, the mention of the game. And have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen it. I read a little bit about it because a friend was building another, like a play off of it. But I haven't seen it.
So really briefly, like Michael Douglas's character, he's rich. He has everything in the world he wants. He's so bored. And then he, like, for his birthday one year, like, he finds himself in a lot of trouble. He loses all his money. He's being chased by gangsters. And by the end, he's on a rooftop with a lady who he thinks took all his money. And then a door opens and he turns and he shoots the first person that comes through it. And it's his brother wishing him a happy birthday because he like put him through this elaborate game so he could find enjoyment and excitement out of life. But he had just shot and killed his brother. So what does he do? Let's watch what he does next in that last scene.
Can we do that on this?
The game.
Are we going to get hit with a copyright?
So in the end of that movie, it turns out like he survived. Obviously, it was all a big setup. His brother was just there were blanks in the gun. Hey man, you won the game, and he's like, "Oh, that was the best birthday ever."
Best birthday ever.
It's a David Fincher movie. I see people asking about that.
Right. You know what I thought was interesting?
What?
Like out of all of that, I was watching him fall, and I don't know how accurate this is, but remember how I mentioned that V shape?
Yeah.
Did you see when he fell through the little panes? They all like, it made this perfect V shape that he fell right into. And I was like, oh, I don't know if they were, similar. Now, obviously that was like an ornamental glass thing, but I wonder if there was a similar structure.
Very interesting. Like him falling off a building onto like a roof with a skylight in it. He missed the skylight.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of questions surrounding that. Like, were his coworkers messing with him and putting him through something like that? Did he think he would survive that fall? Was he just, and this is, the next question, was he just going through some sort of mental breakdown, and that scene in the movie came to him and maybe he went up to the roof of the hotel and watched the sunset, and then just something happened and he wanted to reenact that last scene. But it's just so eerily similar to what happened to him.
It is. And then the other thing I thought of when you were reading this at the beginning, I talked about like brothers and sisters. Right now around the world, volcanoes are erupting. I don't know how much you know about Scientology.
Not much.
There's a lot of interesting, but volcanoes are very central to the story. At least I have never studied it or done anything, but the stories that people have reported from it, because it's all very secretive, we don't, people who are outside of it don't know it. But the people who have talked about those stories, volcanoes are very important in the story. And yes, in the erupting volcanoes. So I kind of feel like there's also a little bit of that, and which is linked very strongly to Hollywood.
This is true.
Yeah. So
Great idea.
I don't know if there's anything there, but that's something I was thinking.
Could be. Daria says, was he forced to join Scientology? The one last thing about the note I'll mention before we wrap up is some people on the Reddit have said that they believe there's some sort of code in the name section.
Right.
Because this is okay. Two things I want to mention about that.
Yeah.
One Reddit user said, what if this speech was actually transcribed from a Freemason speech given by Bill Bonner? Wouldn't that make sense? Bill Bonner, what if he hosted some sort of game and the winner would get to live at one of his many properties around the world?
That's something that I was thinking when I was reading this. And I thought to myself, how do we know that he wrote this? Because it is typed.
That is correct.
We don't know that he wrote this. And I was wondering, I feel like you could come up with a person based on the amount of property. Like if you could say how many people own property in northern Argentina, and what else was it? Spain and in Thailand.
And brag about it.
Yeah.
And yes, so all of these properties listed are places where Bill Bonner owns a home. Mm-hmm. And so in talking to Porter Stansberry, when we assume it's Ray saying, well done, you win, good job, maybe it wasn't Ray at all. Maybe this was a speech from a recent Freemasons meeting or whatever, and Bill Bonner was giving a toast and saying, I mean, this sounds so Bill Bonner to me. I'd also like to single out Keith Richards. You had a great run, buddy, but what's mine is mine. The game is up. That just seems to me like $30 Walmart jean guy from the beginning of the movie. Or the story here tonight, the epic tale, I should say.
Yeah.
So that is a really interesting theory that this is somehow like a transcript that Ray got his hands on and was trying to learn for some reason. But the one part of the note that if it's not Bill Bonner, is specifically Ray oriented, is this middle section where it has all the names of Ray's relatives and friends and everything. Mm-hmm. And the first line that goes into it, along with myself, those players should be made 5 years younger by the council. Some people think that this is some clue to crack the code based on this 5 years younger thing, and then the list of names and what order they're in. Mm-hmm. That's just another rabbit hole. That I
wonder, is there any like alphabetical order that's happening?
Yeah, I don't know. They haven't released, like, it's all redacted. So
right.
You don't even know.
Yeah, because you could take, the letters could be numbers. You add them together. You take 5 away, and that stands for something.
And it's still just like, to Allison, she's just like, what? What is he? This is my husband. What is he talking about? And so one last thing to mention is the creator of Unsolved Mysteries episode revealed for the first time that while he was being interviewed for a podcast, he divulged that an unidentified somebody was very interested in Ray's computers once they had been taken by the police, and even tried to pick them up without identification. Allison went to the police station to pick up Ray's computer after this had happened, and the detective mentioned that this person had called a few times insisting that he needed to get that computer, and the police wouldn't hand it over to him. So they told Allison when she went in to get his computer that had happened. So someone was after his computer. So
I know what was on there, or did they know what was behind it?
Right. Oh, maybe.
I know, because it's interesting, because you have to think anybody who could come across this note wouldn't understand, right?
Right.
So, like, why keep it so hidden? You know, is somebody looking for it? Is it, I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah. So there's so much to consider. In conclusion, the mystery is just, it's baffling. There's rabbit holes all over the place online. If you do any digging, Agora employees being found dead mysteriously. Like, he's not the only one that's been found mysteriously dead. Original reporters on the scene have been found like floating in a swamp. Conflicting reports came out afterwards. After Unsolved Mysteries episode came out, Porter Stansberry like contacted Netflix and was like, "This is wrong. We never put a gag order. We never told our employees not to work with it." But I mean, I don't know how he proves that. But he's still protecting his name in this whole situation. Allison is still looking for the truth.
Right.
People closest to the case from 17 years ago, they just say like they're just still as baffled as they were the first few days, and they break it down as either you think he killed himself or you think he was murdered. Makita Brotman, who wrote the book An Unexplained Death, that like is a thoroughly researched and encompassing book on this whole event. She is a very smart woman, and she did all of her research, and her personal feeling is that Ray was having like the early stages of schizophrenia. He had a psychotic break and he was delusional, and one day he decided to find his way up to the roof of that hotel and jump off. But it is her opinion that he jumped off by his own free will. Other people I mentioned think that maybe within the Agora there is some sort of game, and he just like wasn't in the right headspace for it, and it just, for whatever reason, his coworkers caused him to do it. Maybe not because like on purpose. Maybe they didn't want to murder him. One detective that I was listening to an interview of said something interesting about the three friends that employees that found the hole. And they said that a lot of times when someone's involved in a murder and it's someone that they cared about and loved, and the police still haven't found their body, they'll try and help the police find the body just because they want the closure for their friend.
That absolutely happens.
Maybe these employees already knew. It's interesting. It is important to note that all three of these employees like didn't work for Agora for very much longer after this happened. They all went their separate ways. And I know that you're soaking this in for the first time, but what is your initial thoughts?
Whew. It is really tough. One other question. All of these names, I know you said they were like friends, family. Were any of those coworkers too? Like, were any of these people connected back to Stansberry or Bonner or?
Yeah, it was all friends, family, and coworkers.
Okay, so not everybody had a connection back to his work.
No.
Interesting.
People in Ray's life.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, it's really tough because, you know, there's so many things that are conflicting. Like, you know, we talked about jumping off the roof. You know, it's hard to imagine him, like I said, getting that speed, because that was a little ledge, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it's not like he was on the big part of the roof where you can really get going. Like, in order to get that speed, you have to really run on a ledge. Like, and you're afraid of heights.
Right.
So how do you have that precision? Because, like, Have you ever tried walking on a balance beam? It is like, I've done it and it's not even that far off the ground and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So imagine being afraid of heights. You're already really disoriented and then running at that high speed. That is hard to imagine. But at the same time, it's really hard to imagine somebody standing on the ledge, throwing him or any object hard enough to make it travel that far. Like, none of those make sense to me. So I don't know, but I don't think him jumping off a roof is the whole story.
Yeah. Personally, my opinion is that I cannot get over the cell phone and the sunglasses
Yeah,
that are
that's
not
right.
scratched from that jump, and the size of the hole and the size of his body. So I just my feeling is that he was killed.
Yeah.
And
then staged.
then somebody put a hole in the roof
Yeah.
and put his body in that room.
Yeah.
And somebody who knew the building and knew how to get in without being seen and knew how to turn
an
cameras
area
off.
where people weren't gonna, come in for a while, let
Right.
him.
And so in this instance, I think, if I'm just speculating, it's something to do with either a tip that Ray gave out, and somebody, Agora was in hot water because someone was making noise and they needed a fall guy.
Yeah.
And what better fall guy than the guy who's getting ready to leave town? Doesn't really fit in anyway.
Is there a
Let's get
mafia
Ray
in
over
Baltimore?
here. Right. And so Ray, in my opinion, Ray was the fall guy for some bad things that Agura did. And he just was, it was kind of like he was the sacrificial lamb.
Right.
Which is, but that's my opinion. There's also and I invite anyone to go into the YouTube and Reddits and
do your research that you can.
I
It's
found
hard.
a YouTube video where someone was literally, I don't know anything about Freemasons and codes and numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot.
somebody literally can prove that he was sacrificed by the Freemasons based on all of these numbers attached to it. I
mean, unless you're a Freemason, it's a little hard to prove.
But in closing, I hold the same hope that Detective Michael Byer, the very first detective that never gave up hope, he's retired now and he's still working on the case.
Oh, wow, just independently.
Yeah, he thinks someone out there knows something, and all it would take is one person to say something, just like your case earlier.
Yeah.
And to bring Allison and his parents and his brother and her sister peace. And I truly, truly wish and pray for someday before they die that they can wrap some closure around missing Ray.
Yeah. I can't help but wonder what the relationship was really like with Porter at the end.
Yeah, after, maybe it was like a Godfather thing. Once he's like, I just can't work for you anymore. Maybe Porter's like, okay.
It's an absolute possible some kind of, even if it wasn't a tip he gave out, it's some kind of financial secret. As we talked about in my story too, they have huge implications, and people are willing to do a lot to cover them up. So who knows? There's just so many possibilities in this case. David and I were talking about that recently, especially because I did, the Dyatlov Pass story, and now this story, we keep talking about how in these kind of cases, there's so much information. And oftentimes, a huge chunk of it means nothing. You can assign meaning to it, but usually it's like one small, thing. But there's so much information that you get bombarded with that you can't make sense. You can't find that trail. That if you could if I could just take out this piece and this piece, it makes sense, but you can't get rid of it because you don't know what it means.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, I read a bunch of blogs from people who are just like, what's the razor you said earlier? Oxford razor.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor.
Occam's razor. The simplest
guys,
answer is
he jumped. He
I know.
Don't worry about it.
I know. Yeah, the simplest answer is often the correct one, but it is not always the correct answer.
Well, this has been a record-breaking magical mystery.
I know. I can't believe it. Oh, my God.
2 hours. We were both like, my story might be 2 hours. I don't know. I think yours is much shorter than mine.
Oh, yeah, you're right, because mine was like an hour and 20. But yours,
hopefully it was still entertaining.
Oh, yeah, I found it fascinating. I hope everybody else. Thank you guys for sticking around. That's amazing.
And Dari says, now do something lighthearted like improv. But as you know, we end each of these mystery hours with a Polly and Amanda duet.
Yes. So we,
I
thought when we were talking about it, because, I had originally said when we were talking about doing a duet, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because it's true crime and there are families. Both of us have families who are still looking for their missing loved ones. It's so heavy. And I was like, I don't know what we do. And Paul's like, well, let's keep it a little lighter then, because we have this, the song is not about our cases, and it's a good way for us to end the show. Not on a positive note, obviously, but just on a little bit lighter fare after such heavy talks. So also when I play this, I know last time we had like this little echo issue. I think that this will be fine. All of the settings were all correct last time. I don't know what the deal was. But I think it should be fine. But if there's any echoes, go ahead and let me know in the chat, and I'll play it through the computer instead of OBS. And that'll fix it. But again, hoping OBS cooperates this time.
And what better way to go all lighthearted and don't take us too seriously than ending with a little Britney Spears.
Yes.
And here is Britney Spears' Criminal.
All right. Enjoy.
She is a villain by the devil's law. She is a killer just for fun, 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 fun. That girl's a snitch, she's unpredictable. She's got no conscience, she's got none, 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 none.
I know, should've let go,
but no. And even I know this ain't smart. Mama, I'm in love with a criminal. And this type of love isn't rational, it's physical.
Mama, please don't cry, I will be alright. All reason aside, I just can't deny I love that guy.
And I got her name tattooed on my arm, my lucky charm.
So I guess it's okay, he's with me.
And I hear people talk, try to make remarks, keep us apart. 'Cause mama, I'm in love with a criminal. And this type of love isn't rational, it's physical. Mama, please don't cry, I will be alright. All reason aside, I just can't deny I love this gal. I'm in love with a criminal. And this type of love isn't rational, it's physical. Mama, please don't cry, I will be alright. All reason aside, I just can't deny I love this gal.
That was awesome.
Great job with that.
Yeah, you too.
And tell Silberman they did great too.
I know. Thank you, Silberman.
Yes.
I can't believe it. Like, my phone already autocorrects to it. Like, I even tried, because I said it's autocorrecting Silverman, and it right away it was like, did you mean Silberman? And I was like, what? Wow, we just made that up like a minute ago.
Less than that.
Wow.
Thanks everybody for hanging out so late. It's been a minute since the last time we were live streaming after 1 a.m.
We'll only do this on Fridays.
Right. And also a quick reminder, our most recent audio podcast episode dropped yesterday. So if you haven't had a chance yet to find our audio podcast, jump on to Apple Podcasts or however you consume it and leave us a positive review. I would
5
appreciate
stars.
that. And as Amanda pulls up the script for our ending here, I will say, I will do a shameless plug. Did you know you could also, you can sponsor an audio podcast episode for just $10. We'll give you a shout out. We'll read a little clip of whether it's for your work, your company, or you just want to leave a little message on an audio podcast episode. You can do that for just $10. Go ahead and reach out to me on the socials and ask me how. All right. Are we good?
Yeah.
Then we will officially say thank you for joining us for the 3rd episode of the Magical Mystery Hour.
Our next episode will feature more mysteries.
If you enjoyed tonight's stories and don't want to miss out on the next, be sure to like the YouTube live stream and subscribe to the Vaudacity Network so you don't miss any future stories, as well as great music and comedy.
And if you loved the audio podcast, please be sure you are subscribed on that platform as well. And please leave the show a positive review and help more people who like this kind of show find our Magical Mystery Hour.
Until the next mystery.
Good night.
Or good morning. It's been an hour.